Hey guys, tonight we're doing something, well, honestly kind of miserable. We're heading back to the Middle Ages, not for knights or dragons or majestic castle views, but for something far more chilling, literally. Tonight, we're diving headfirst into the brutal, bleak, bone-snapping reality of winter in medieval Europe. Think you'd survive it? Yeah, you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Seriously, I'm not trying to be your annoying village crier. Also, drop your city and what time you're listening. Let's see who's tuning in from the coldest place tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You open your eyes and exhale. Your breath puffs in front of you, turning instantly to mist. No, you're not outside. This is inside. Inside a small wooden house, or rather, a structure pretending to be one. Its walls are timber, daubed with mud and straw that cracked weeks ago. The roof sags with snow. The single window is covered in greased cloth that lets in a thin, sickly yellow glow. And the wind? It snakes through every crevice. You pull the blanket tighter around your shoulders. It's not helping. Welcome to winter in the 14th century. The year is 1315, and things are already bad. You're in a small village somewhere in northern Europe. Could be England, France, the Holy Roman Empire. It doesn't matter, really. Winter doesn't discriminate. Last year's harvest failed. Rain drowned everything. And what little grain they managed to store is either gone or starting to rot. Some of it's turned black, laced with a fungus no one understands but everyone fears. Ergot. It causes convulsions, hallucinations, gangrene. People say it's the devil's wheat, and it's cold. Oh, it's so cold. Not the brisk, romanticised chill of a December postcard. No, this is teeth-rattling, marrow-freezing cold. You can't feel your fingers. Your toes are maybe fine. You haven't checked lately. You don't want to. There's a fire, barely. Some embers, a few sticks too wet to catch. You huddle near it like it's your god. But firewood is running low. No one wants to go back into the forest. Wolves have been seen near the edge. And you don't have shoes. You wrap your feet in rags and hope for the best. Outdoors, everything is white, heavy, silent. The snow is deceptive. It looks soft but hides treacherous ice, frozen mud, and the occasional stiff corpse. Yes, people freeze out there. Drunks mostly, and the very old. Sometimes just children who wandered a little too far from the fire. Inside, it's barely better. The hut stinks of unwashed bodies, animal dung, smoke, and mould. You share your space with a goat and 2 chickens. They're the only warmth you have besides your family. You sleep curled around your sister, your cousin, maybe your mum. There's no such thing as personal space here. Everyone's breathing the same sour air. And sleep? Forget about restful slumber. Medieval people had what scholars now call segmented sleep. You pass out early, around sundown, wake up again sometime after midnight, shivering, your bladder aching, your dreams dark and confusing, and maybe pray or stoke the fire or stare into the void. Then you go back to sleep until dawn, if you can. One historical record from the period describes villagers digging up graves just to burn the wooden coffins. Desperate measures for desperate nights. The forest is not generous, and you can't chop down trees with frozen hands and a dull axe. Besides, everyone's afraid of what might be watching out there. Spirits, wolves, starving men. The fringe fact. Some families would smear animal fat on their bodies and wrap themselves in straw to sleep warmer. You, slicked in pig grease and bundled like a hay bale, are not exactly peaking in dignity. But hey, at least you're not dead. There's debate among historians about just how bad winters really were. Some argue that the so-called Little Ice Age didn't fully kick in until the 1500s. Others point to the Great Famine of 1315 to 1317 as a warning shot, an early cold snap signalling what was to come. What's clear is that weather patterns shifted unpredictably. Summers were wetter, winters harsher, and people had no way of understanding it. They blamed it on sin, or witches, or the wrath of saints. Your stomach growls. You haven't eaten anything hot in days. There's a broth simmering in a pot over the fire, if you can call it that. It's a sludge of turnip peelings, onion skin, and stale beer. Maybe a bone, if someone found one. You slurp it down. It scalds your throat and doesn't fill your belly, but at least it's warm. Your neighbour died last night. Old Martin. Froze to death in his bed. No one found him until morning. They wrapped him in a sheet and dragged him to the churchyard on a sled. The ground is too hard to dig, so his body waits, stiff and pale, in a shed beside the chapel. There are others there already. More will come. And still the church bells ring. Sunday morning. The path to the chapel is treacherous, but you'll go anyway. Everyone goes. It's warm there, sort of. And more importantly, it's the only place left where people still pretend there's hope. They say spring is coming, that the saints will intercede, that God will not forget the faithful. You're not so sure. Outside, the snow starts falling again. The flakes are fat, slow, relentless. Like the cold, they do not stop. You stare into the whiteout, eyes glazed, body aching. Welcome to winter in the Middle Ages. You're going to want to hold on to that little fire. It's all you've got. You wake to silence. Not the peaceful kind. The unsettling, too quiet kind that makes your skin crawl. The fire's gone out again. Someone was supposed to feed it during the night, but your younger brother fell asleep and now the last ember is cold ash. You're angry, but you don't bother scolding him. What's the point? Your stomach feels like it's trying to eat itself. There's no breakfast. Not really. Just a crust of rye bread from 2 days ago, hard enough to chip a tooth on. You chew slowly, trying to coax some flavour out of it, but mostly it tastes like wood. If you're lucky, there's some lard to smear on it, a translucent smear scraped from a pot that once held bacon fat. You eat in silence, chewing mechanically. Hunger doesn't leave room for conversation. You glance at your mother. Her face is thinner than you remember, eyes sunken, lips chapped and cracked. She used to sing while cooking, even if all she had was barley and leeks. But she hasn't sung in weeks. No one has. Outside, the village has already begun moving. Men are walking toward the forest, dragging small carts or carrying crude axes. They need fuel, or kindling at least. Every scrap of dry wood near the village is gone, long since scavenged. Now they have to go farther into the woods. That's dangerous in winter, and not just because of the cold. Wolves. The word sits in your mind like a warning bell. They've been seen more often lately, slinking between trees at twilight, hungry, brave, and not nearly as afraid of humans as they should be. You've heard the stories, how they've pulled down travellers, even snatched babies from village edges. Some say it's not just wolves either. There are darker things in the forest, older than Christianity, angry and cold. But nobody says those names aloud. Back inside the house, your father sits sharpening a knife. The blade's nearly worn down, but he's meticulous. You remember when he was stronger, when he laughed and tossed you over his shoulder in the fields. Now his hands shake a little, and there's a grim line around his mouth that never goes away. He hasn't smiled since the last harvest failed. The grain stores are low, very low, and what's left isn't exactly fresh. You've eaten worse, but this stuff is suspicious. It smells odd. Sour, a little fishy. You've seen it. People who eat the bad rye. They start twitching or hallucinating. Some scream about fire inside their skin. Others go stiff and blacken, losing fingers and toes. The old people call it St. Anthony's fire. You call it what it is. Rot. And you're probably eating it tonight. You watch as your mother opens a burlap sack and scoops out a handful of grain. She sifts it slowly, picking out anything clearly moulded, but the truth is the line between food and poison is very blurry right now. There's no choice. You eat or you die. One of your neighbours already has. Not from starvation, not technically. She ate tainted grain, then started screaming about demons dancing in her house. Said her skin was burning. She ripped her clothes off, ran into the snow and kept running. They found her body 2 days later. Frozen solid, her feet raw and bloody. Still, everyone eats the bread. Here's a fringe little nugget for you. In some regions, people used to bury grain in the snow to keep it fresh. Not like a cool medieval fridge, more like desperation turned into tradition. Cold storage, with a side of rats and mould. As you stare at the tiny pile of grain your family's managed to scavenge for the day, you realise something. There's no backup plan, no corner store, no delivery service, no relief wagon rolling into town. This is it. What you've got is all you're getting. And that terrifying feeling of not enough? It's not just yours, it's everyone's. The town reeve, a nervous man with a hunched back and one eye that never quite looks straight, makes his way through the muddy snow. He's counting, rationing, trying to stretch what's left in the village's communal stores. You've heard the whispers. They'll start seizing food from hoarders soon. The reeve doesn't look like much, but he travels with 2 men carrying clubs. Hunger makes everyone dangerous. And just because you're starving doesn't mean you can slack off. Work still needs to be done. Animals still need feeding, if you have any left. Most families have slaughtered what they could before the cold set in. Meat doesn't spoil as quickly in the cold, but supplies don't last forever. Salt is expensive. Smoking takes time and firewood. And drying meat in winter? You'd be lucky if it doesn't just freeze solid and crack like a brick when you try to eat it. You head to the small village barn, hoping to trade something, anything, for a cup of barley or maybe a withered carrot. The barter system is alive and well here. Coins are for the rich. You might offer a bit of wool, a cracked pot, or even a promise of labour. Your breath clouds the air as you step inside. The barn smells like hay, manure, and desperation. A few animals huddle in the corners, 2 half-dead sheep, a skinny cow, and an old sow that looks more skeleton than pig. Old Martha runs the place. She's ancient, with a face like a dried apple and hands like tree bark. She eyes you with suspicion. "What have you got to trade?" she asks. You offer your wool hat. You've had it since you were little. It's too small now, itchy, but it's warm. Kind of. She takes it without a word and hands you a bundle wrapped in cloth. When you get home, you unwrap it. It's a turnip. Shriveled, slightly soft and oddly shaped like a foot. Still, your family cheers. It's the best thing anyone's eaten all week. And then there's the rats. They're everywhere in winter, drawn to the warmth, the food scraps, the soft hay. You hear them at night, scritching in the walls, squeaking beneath the floorboards. Sometimes you see their tiny red eyes glowing near the hearth. Your little brother used to be afraid of them. Now he tries to catch them. Last week he succeeded. Your mother cooked it. The scholarly debate that keeps popping up among historians is just how widespread famine truly was across all of Europe. Some argue that chronic hunger was normal, and the famines were just particularly bad years in an already lean lifestyle. Others insist that events like the Great Famine were outliers, cascading disasters, not the norm. Either way, winter didn't help. It never helped. You go to bed that night feeling a little less hollow but still cold. You wonder if spring will come early. Everyone always says it might. The priest even claimed the signs were good this year. He said the same thing last year. You pull the straw blanket up to your chin, close your eyes, and pretend that your feet don't feel like blocks of ice. Pretend that tomorrow might be warmer. It won't be. You're awake again. Not because you want to be, because something dripped on your forehead. Cold. Sharp. You blink up at the thatched ceiling. A fine thread of melted snow is working its way through the roof, forming a slow, spiteful drop that always seems to land right between your eyes. You roll over onto the damp straw mattress that smells faintly of mildew, goat, and last week's puke. Not yours, thankfully. Small blessings. The floor is a mess, mud, straw, droppings, bits of charred wood from the hearth. You wonder if the filth will ever freeze solid so you can stop stepping in it. But the temperature dances cruelly just below freezing, thawing just enough during the day to make everything wet, and freezing just enough at night to turn your floor into a crusty, slippery nightmare. You were dreaming of a bath, not a warm one, not even a hot one, just something to scrape off the grime clinging to your scalp, your fingernails, the backs of your knees. something to make you feel even vaguely human. But then, you remember where you are. Bathing? In winter? Absolutely not. First off, water has to be hauled. That means walking down to the nearest stream or well, breaking through the ice, scooping it up in buckets and lugging it all the way back to your home, assuming you don't fall in or get eaten by something on the way. Then it has to be heated over a fire that probably doesn't exist right now because no one wants to waste kindling on vanity. And second, bathing can kill you. No, really. In the Middle Ages, wintertime washing was a full-on health hazard. Strip naked in an unheated room. You're practically begging for pneumonia, even if you do it fast. Bucket dump, frantic scrub, dry with a cloth that hasn't been dry since late October. You'll still end up shivering for hours afterward. Not to mention, everyone's terrified of what cold water does to your humours. You've heard the priest say it, bathing in winter invites death through the pores. He means it too, so instead you stink. Everyone stinks. The whole village smells like damp wool, week-old sweat and pig. You've gotten used to it, in the way people get used to dying teeth or the sound of crying babies. It's just part of life. You once asked your grandmother how people used to keep clean. She told you about bathhouses, public ones, like little steamy wooden sheds where people soak together. You thought that sounded kind of nice, honestly. She laughed and said they were shut down. Too much sin, too much disease. Too many people doing more than just washing, if you catch the drift. Some towns still have them, but not yours. And even in places where they exist, they're mostly shut up for winter. Water freezes in the pipes, or barrels really, and heating an entire bathhouse in the cold costs a fortune. Plus, nobody wants to take their clothes off in January unless death is the goal. Instead, you wash strategically. A damp cloth to the face, maybe your hands, your armpits if you're feeling bold. The water's always cold. Always. You flinch every time it touches your skin, but afterward, you feel marginally more alive. That sensation lasts about 20 minutes before the sweat, smoke and farm filth reclaim you. You've heard that nobles have perfumes. They dab them on their wrists and necks and pretend they're clean. Lavender water, rose oil. You've never seen them with your own eyes, but you imagine it smells like spring. You'd settle for not smelling like a wet dog with a sinus infection. And then there's your hair. Oily, tangled, flattened into strange shapes by your sleeping cap. Combing it hurts. Lice are a constant companion. You try not to scratch in public. Your scalp has little red bumps all over it, and you suspect one of them is infected. Not that anyone cares. Fringe fact time. In some colder regions, people used to shave their eyebrows during winter, supposedly to reduce frost build-up on the face, but also as a weird cleanliness ritual. You don't know anyone who does it now, but imagine going around looking surprised all winter long, not worth it. So how did people manage hygiene in a world where water could kill you? Well, they didn't. Not really. There are scholars today who argue that medieval people weren't actually that dirty, that they used cloth wiping, dry scrubbing techniques, or bathed more often than we assume, but that's mostly summer behaviour. Winter, it's a different beast. When everything freezes, bathing becomes a gamble, and since no one wants to be the one person to get sick because they wanted to smell nice, no one bothers. You leave the house to do your morning chore, it's your turn to clean out the latrine. Congratulations, you shuffle to the edge of the property where a rough wooden box sits over a shallow pit. The smell is medieval. You don't even gag anymore. Most people use chamber pots during the night and dump them in the morning, usually somewhere downwind. Sometimes people dig trenches. Sometimes they just hope for a good snowstorm to cover the mess. The idea of an outhouse, as you might imagine it, that's a luxury. You've got a plank with a hole in it and a half-broken door that doesn't latch. This is the part where you start regretting that sour beer soup you had last night. When you're done, you trudge back inside, nose numb, eyes watering from the cold and the stench. Your clothes are damp again. Your boots, if you can call them that, are leaking. Wool socks? Hilarious. You're wearing strips of cloth tied with twine. Inside, your mother is trying to boil water for tea. It's not tea the way you're thinking. It's hot water with a few dried leaves or herbs in it. Something bitter and vaguely plant-like. If you're lucky, a bit of honey. But the bees didn't do well last year, nothing did. You sip the hot water like it's holy. It's the only warm thing you'll have all day. Your friend Alric once tried to bathe in a nearby stream last winter. He thought he could handle it. "I'm strong," he said. "I'll go quick." He didn't come back for 2 hours. When they found him, his lips were blue and he couldn't speak. He survived, but he doesn't remember it. Now he just shivers, even when he stands near the fire. Another debate modern historians love. Whether medieval people actually believed bathing caused disease, or whether they just didn't have the resources to do it safely. Some texts warn against overbathing, claiming it weakens the body. Others suggest that warm baths are great, if you're rich and have servants to keep the fire going. But down here, in the village, the rule is simple. Wash in summer, stink in winter. Anyone who deviates is considered mad or suicidal. You stretch out your hands toward the fire, which is back to a dull flicker now. Just enough to keep your fingers from going numb, just enough to survive. You think about your dream again, that bath, steam rising, water sloshing gently, a soft cloth brushing your skin. You hold onto the image like a prayer. Then someone farts loudly. Your little brother bursts out laughing. So does your cousin. You smile despite yourself. Even in this frozen, mud-scented nightmare, sometimes something almost feels like warmth. The fire is finally going. You and your father manage to coax it back to life with some pine cones, half-burned bark, and the last sliver of dry kindling. The flames are feeble, but there's something. You crouch beside it, palms out, eyes half closed. This is the best it gets. You glance around the room. Smoke curls lazily toward the ceiling, staining the timbers above. There's a single window in the hut, more a hole than anything, covered in oiled cloth to keep the wind out, but it barely works. Every gust outside makes the walls creak like they're going to fall inward. You feel it in your bones, the cold settling in deeper than your skin, like a mould creeping along the floorboards of your spine. But hey, you're lucky, right? You're in a house. Sort of. You've seen people living in lean-tos, root cellars, even burrows dug into hillsides. Peasants with no land, no animals, no fire, just the clothes on their backs and a half-rotten cabbage between them. And as bad as your hut is, at least it has a roof. One that leaks, sure, but a roof. The walls are made of wattle and daub, woven sticks packed with a mix of mud, straw, and yes, manure. It holds heat, theoretically. In reality, every breeze whistles through like it paid rent. And the floor, packed earth, patted down by 100 footsteps slick with melted snow and animal filth. Not a floor you'd walk barefoot on if you value your toes. In one corner, your father's boots sit stiffly, coated in frozen mud. In another, the family's woolen cloaks hang from a crude peg. They're not drying. They've been damp since October. You sniff yours and immediately regret it. Smells like something died, came back to life, and then died again inside a wet sheep. And that's the noble dream, wet wool and frozen breath. Because here's the thing, castles aren't better. Everyone thinks living in a castle means comfort. Maybe you picture roaring fires, velvet curtains, goblets of hot wine and haunches of roasted meat. That's cute. Reality check. Medieval castles are giant stone refrigerators. You ever try heating a building made entirely of thick limestone with a ceiling 20 feet high? Doesn't matter how many fireplaces you stuff into those walls, the heat disappears into the rock like it's feeding some ancient frost demon. Even nobles wrap themselves in layers, furs, cloaks, padded doublets, and boots lined with straw or moss. They might have had better clothes, but not by much, and they still slept under heavy wool blankets with hot bricks at their feet, if they could get them. Servants woke up early to light fires in their lord's chambers, but by the time the noble actually rolled out of bed, the flames were choking on damp ash, and the room was still cold enough to store meat. Plus, no one wants to mention this, but castles had drafts, horrendous ones. Wind slipping through arrow slits, blowing through stone corridors, whistling down chimneys like the world's angriest ghost. And if you're thinking, well, at least they had beds, sure. Great beds even. giant four-posters, canopied with heavy drapes. Wanna guess why? Not luxury, insulation. Pull those curtains closed and trap a little body heat before the frostbite sets in. And even then, you're sleeping in a hat. Oh, and don't forget, they shared those beds. Not just with spouses, but with attendants, siblings, or anyone worth warming up next to. A pile of people under a pile of blankets. That's your medieval heating system. You heard once about a king who ordered braziers, big metal pots of burning coal, to be wheeled into the great hall during a feast. Everyone thought it was extravagant. One noble even passed out from the heat. That's how rare warmth was. A slightly above freezing room made people dizzy with joy. Now here's a strange but true fringe fact. In some castles, walls were tapestried not just for decoration, but for insulation. Enormous woven scenes of unicorns, saints, or battles served a dual purpose: keep out the chill and give people something to look at while their toes went numb. Think of it as medieval wallpaper/blanket. Of course, all of this assumes you live in a castle, which you don't. You're a peasant. You sleep beside your siblings in a room smaller than a modern shed, with one door, no windows, and the ceiling low enough to smack your forehead every other morning. The fire is the centre of everything. It's for cooking, warming, drying, and praying around. You tend it like it's alive. And the smoke? It doesn't go anywhere. Most huts don't have chimneys. The smoke drifts upward, finds a hole if it can, or just sits under the ceiling, painting everything black. Your eyes sting, your lungs ache, and your clothes smell like roasted misery. But if you open the door to let the smoke out, you let the cold in. So you choose poison over frostbite. Smart. You'd think people would have invented better homes. You're not alone in wondering that. Historians still argue about it. Why didn't peasants insulate their walls better? Why no chimneys until later centuries? Some think it was lack of resources. Others think it was tradition, or just inertia. But it might also be this. Everybody was just trying to survive the day. Innovation comes slower when you're one snowstorm away from starving. Still, there are some clever hacks. You once helped your uncle build a wind wall outside his hut. Just a bunch of bundled sticks stacked high to block the winter wind. Didn't help much, but it made him feel like he was doing something. Some people line their walls with hay bales for insulation, others use straw mats, and a few lucky families stuff their boots with fur scraps. But none of that matters when the frost creeps in. You feel it at night, rising from the floor like a ghost. Your breath fogs in the dark. You curl tighter under the blanket, pressing your feet into your sister's back for warmth. She grunts but doesn't push you away. You try to remember summer, the way the sun made everything shimmer, how warm your skin felt, the heat baking the dirt roads until you could see little waves in the air. But it feels like a dream now, like a story someone told you once that maybe wasn't even real. Morning comes, if you can call it that. It's more like the dark grey smear that replaces night for a few miserable hours. You're already awake when it arrives, lying there, staring at the rafters with your blanket pulled over your head, trying to pretend your breath doesn't smell like old onions and goat fur. Your feet are numb. Again. But they still itch. Somehow. That should be impossible. You sit up, and the cold slaps you instantly, like an invisible hand, open-palmed and angry. You hiss through your teeth. The rag-wrapped bundle that is your foot touches the floor, and you instantly regret it. The dirt is frozen. Not metaphorically, it's literally frozen solid. You're walking on indoor permafrost. Lovely. You shuffle toward the hearth, where the fire has, once again, nearly died. Someone's already stirring the embers. It's your sister this time. She has a piece of charcoal in one hand and a chunk of dry moss in the other. She looks half dead, hair sticking out in directions no laws of physics allow. But she nods at you like, yep, still alive. Barely. Today is chore day. Well, every day is chore day, but today it's your turn to head out with your cousin to collect whatever's still edible from the vegetable pit. You're not thrilled. The pit is a few minutes' walk outside the village. It's nothing fancy, just a hole dug deep into the ground, filled with root vegetables and packed over with straw and dirt. In the summer, it's a genius bit of preservation. In the winter, it's where you go to realise how pathetic your food security truly is. You bundle up 3 layers of tunics, a cloak that might once have been brown but is now a patchy grey-green thing with the texture of an old rug, and your faithful foot wraps. You strap a bit of boiled leather around the bottoms, hoping they'll pass as shoes today. They won't. You step outside and instantly your face stings. The wind bites your cheeks, cuts through your sleeves and flirts with frostbite like it's trying to get your number. The snow crunches underfoot, icy on top, slush beneath. There's no colour in the world anymore, just white, grey, and the dull brown of dead things. Your cousin falls into step beside you, wrapped in a woolen sheet and wearing gloves made of stitched rabbit pelts. The ears are still attached. He looks like he mugged a taxidermist and lost the fight. You say nothing on the walk. It's too cold for talking. Your breath comes in short bursts. You try not to cough because once you start, it's hard to stop. Everyone's lungs are raw this time of year. The pit's location isn't exactly secret, but it's off the beaten path. You brush aside the snow, then the straw, and uncover the top hatch. A crude lid made of branches lashed together with twine. You pry it open and stare down into the void. Inside, turnips, or what's left of them, a few carrots, limp and white like they've seen things, a beet shriveled to the size of a mouse. You reach in, fingers stiff with cold, and pull out what you can carry. Half of it's frostbitten, the rest is soft in ways that vegetables shouldn't be. Still, it's food. Kind of. This is what peasant life looks like in winter, scraping by on what you buried back in autumn, and praying something edible survived the frost, the rot, and the rats. Back home your mother looks thrilled. Turnips, she says, like you just came back with golden apples. She immediately starts planning the meal. It'll be boiled, obviously. Everything's boiled. It's the only way to make food last and not kill you. The stew she makes isn't bad, all things considered. Watery, but warm. A little sour from the turnips, a little sweet from the carrot. There's no meat, of course. That's a luxury you haven't seen in weeks. Not since the pig was slaughtered and the last hunk of smoked ham was traded to the reeve in exchange for grain. You remember that meal, the way the fat shimmered in the pot, the salt, the chewiness, the way everyone got quiet when they ate, as if speaking would break the spell. Meat has that effect. Your little brother slurps his stew so loudly it feels personal. Your father doesn't seem to notice. He's focused on a chunk of turnip like it holds the secrets of the universe. Your sister offers you a crust of bread to go with it. It's hard as a roof tile and tastes vaguely of old wood, but it helps fill the empty space in your stomach. One of the weird facts people don't really think about. Peasants didn't usually bake their own bread. The lord of the manor owned the oven. You had to pay to use it, or give up a portion of your grain, so most of your bread is made in batches, brought home, and then gnawed on until it either disintegrates or grows fur. This piece is somewhere between those stages. You're lucky it's even bread and not just mushy grain patted into a disc and dried by the fire. There's been talk of famine in the next village over. You heard it from a travelling tinker 2 days ago. He came through selling pins, thread and poorly carved dice. Said 2 children had died there. No food, no fuel. He said people are talking about eating bark. You believe him? Because that's not a myth. It's not poetic hyperbole. People ate bark, peeled it off trees and boiled it to soften the fibres, scraped the inner layer, dried it, ground it into powder to stretch flour. It tastes terrible, makes you bloat, and gives you the kind of bathroom experience you wouldn't wish on a tax collector. But if it keeps you alive, it goes in the pot. Scholars argue about how widespread this kind of starvation was. Some claim it was mostly during the Great Famine years, 1315 to 1317, when the rains came early and stayed forever. Others say people in isolated villages face this every winter, just on a quieter scale. You don't need a nationwide catastrophe when one bad season can wipe out your family's food for a year. You think about what happens if the stew runs out, if the pit's empty, if the rats beat you to the next bag of grain. Your father's already working on a backup plan. Trapping. He's got a snare set near the woods. You checked it yesterday. Nothing, but maybe today. A rabbit, even a squirrel would be a feast. Last year he caught a fox. The meat was stringy and gamey, but you ate every bite, even the tail. Your sister still has one of the bones tied around her neck. A charm for luck, she says. You scrape the bottom of your bowl and suck the last drops of broth off your spoon. It's not enough. It never is. But it's something. You go to bed that night feeling full by winter standards, not in pain. You pull the blanket up, tuck your frozen feet under your cousin's legs, and close your eyes. You dream of green fields and butter and fresh bread. And then you wake up to the sound of wolves howling. Of course you do. That howl isn't just far-off background noise. It's close. Too close. You sit bolt upright in your straw bed, heart pounding like a war drum. The thin walls of your hut do little to muffle the sound. It cuts through the air, sharp and rising, trailing off in a note that sounds almost human. Almost. You're not alone in your panic. Your little brother is already awake, his eyes wide, clutching the edge of his blanket with both hands. The others are stirring too. Your father quietly pulling on his boots, your mother reaching for the iron poker near the hearth. The fire's low, barely flickering. Everything looks shadowy and strange, as if the darkness outside is seeping in through the cracks. You listen. Another howl, farther this time. Then a third, even closer than the first. And then silence. That's worse. You all wait, breath held, ears straining. And then the chicken starts screaming. That's your cue. Your father curses under his breath and bolts for the door. He flings it open and rushes into the snow, the poker in one hand, a torch in the other. You follow, not because you want to, but because your feet move on their own, propelled by the sudden adrenaline that says something's going to die tonight, and you'd really prefer it wasn't you. Outside, everything's lit by the moon. Huge, pale, and indifferent. The snow reflects it like glass. You squint and scan the edge of the pen, and there it is. A wolf, lean, grey, its ribs sharp as blades under its fur. It's not just hungry, it's desperate. You freeze. Your father shouts. The wolf freezes too. For a moment you're all statues in the night, holding your breath in the same cold air. Then it bolts. It's fast. Unbelievably fast. It disappears into the tree line before you can even raise a hand. Your cousin throws a rock anyway, just to make himself feel better. It hits a snowbank and disappears with a puff. The chickens are scattered, feathers everywhere. 2 are missing. One's dead, throat torn, steaming in the cold. Your mother joins you, silent, clutching her cloak. She doesn't scold anyone, she just stares at the mess. That chicken was supposed to lay through the winter. It was the best layer. That hurts more than the blood. You carry the dead bird inside, it's already stiff. You'll pluck and boil it tomorrow. There's no time to waste meat, not even when it comes with a side of trauma. You've heard of wolves picking off the weak like this, testing the edges of the village, always watching, always waiting for a mistake. In summer, they stay deep in the forest. But now they're just another hungry neighbour. The woods don't feed them anymore, so they come to you. There's a strange comfort in that, a weird kind of equality. The wolves are cold, starving, and desperate, just like you. Fringe fact: in harsh winters, wolves were known to pack together in unnatural numbers, huge roaming mobs of grey muscle and fang, sometimes dozens strong. Some chronicles even tell of wolves entering towns, breaking into homes. Scholars debate whether that's an exaggeration, or just one of those things that happened once and never got forgotten. Still, you sleep lightly the rest of the night, ears twitching at every creak and rustle. You dream of snow that bites, and eyes glowing in the dark. And when morning comes, the fear doesn't leave. It just gets buried under the long, slow routine of staying alive. You get to work. First, rebuilding the chicken coop. You and your father use whatever scrap wood you can find. Half a broken chair leg, some warped planks, even a piece of the old sled you used when you were smaller. Nails are precious, so you reuse bent ones, hammering them straight with a stone. It won't keep wolves out. Not really, but it might slow them down. Then comes firewood duty. Again, always again. You head into the woods with your cousin, both of you dragging sleds behind you. The snow is heavier than yesterday. It clumps underfoot and sticks to your rag-wrapped boots. Your breath fogs the air in thick puffs. You walk without talking, eyes scanning the trees. Every shadow looks like a predator. There's no dry wood left on the ground. Everything's damp or half-rotten. You climb a small hill and spot a fallen tree that looks promising. Your cousin groans but follows. Together, you hack away at the limbs with a dull hatchet. Every swing jars your frozen hands. Your knuckles are raw. Your nails are black with grime. You load what you can. The sled groans under the weight, but it's good wood. It'll burn clean. That's a win. You start back, slipping on a patch of ice and nearly face-planting. Your cousin laughs. You throw a snowball at him because what else can you do? You get home and the fire's still going. Your mother has made a weak gruel from grain scraps and dried herbs. You eat in silence, listening to the wind pick up. You think you hear another howl, but it might just be the trees. Your uncle drops by later. He looks like a man who's given up shaving and hope in equal measure. He brings news. Another farm lost a goat to the wolves. They're not even hiding it anymore. He says a hunting party's forming. They'll head out tomorrow with torches and spears. Your father agrees to go. You want to join, but he says no. You stay and watch the coop, he tells you. They'll come back, they always do. And he's right. Because winter in the Middle Ages isn't just a season. It's a siege. A long, slow assault from all sides. The cold, the hunger, the sickness, and yes, the wolves. Nature isn't outside the walls. It is the walls, and the door's always open. That night you light 2 extra candles before bed. It's a luxury. Candles are made from tallow, rendered fat, and they stink when they burn. But the light feels protective. Irrational, maybe. Wolves don't care about candlelight. But you do, and when you lie down, wrapped in every blanket and cloak you own, you finally allow yourself a moment of imagination. Just a moment. A real wall. A warm room. Boots with soles. Maybe even a dog of your own. Not a wolf. A real dog. Loyal. Protective. Not hungry. Just warm. The candles flicker in their greasy pools, casting warped shadows on the wall, and yet you find no comfort in the light. Sleep slips over you like a threadbare blanket. Too thin to hold off the cold. Too loose to keep out the dreams. You drift in and out, consciousness swimming just beneath the surface, and then, just as your bones begin to feel distant and your thoughts start softening, coughing, harsh, wet, and close. Someone's lungs are betraying them again. You open your eyes. It's your mother this time. She's turned away from the rest of you, hacking into a bit of cloth held tightly in both hands. You can see her back flexing with each spasm. She thinks she's being quiet. She's not. The sound cuts through the silence like a knife through soft bread. When she finally stops, she folds the cloth in half and presses it to her lap. You can't see what's inside it. You don't want to. Your father pretends to still be asleep. Welcome to the cozy world of medieval disease, where one cough can change everything. Sickness in winter spreads like gossip in a small village. Fast, persistent, and completely impossible to avoid. It doesn't help that everyone's living on top of one another, in rooms where the air is thicker than soup. Warm, yes, but shared warmth is shared germs. You breathe what everyone else breathes. You touch what everyone else touches. And you hope, pray, that your body is strong enough to fight back. This morning it seems that hope is thinning. Your mother claims she's fine. Just the chill, she says, smiling with lips dry and cracked. Got a bit of frost in my chest. You nod, even though you know that's not a real thing. It's just what people say when they don't want to admit they might be dying. There's no doctor here, no physician. The village healer is an old woman named Alna, who knows her way around herbs and poultices, but smells like she's been soaking in vinegar since October. Her cures help more often than they hurt, but that's a low bar. You've seen what winter illness does. It starts with a cough or a fever, maybe a swelling under the jaw. Then come the sweats, the shakes, the sores. By the time someone's too sick to work, it's usually too late to help. And even if you could help, how? Boil some bark? Whisper a prayer to St. Roch and hope he's listening? Your mother tells you not to worry, so naturally you worry harder. Later that day, you're sent to fetch Alna. You find her hunched over a bowl of something foul-smelling, stirring it with a stick that was probably once part of a fence. Her house is small and cluttered, walls lined with drying herbs, bones, and things in jars that you try not to identify. She looks up when you come in, her eyes sharp beneath the eyebrows thick enough to qualify as thatch. She comes willingly, thankfully, with a bag slung over one shoulder. Inside are bits of this and that, dried nettle, comfrey root, beeswax, and something black and sticky she calls tree balm. You're pretty sure it's just pitch. At your house, she presses a hand to your mother's forehead, mutters something in Latin that's probably fake, then brews a tea so bitter it nearly peels the enamel from your teeth just smelling it. Your mother drinks it. She always does. Even though last time it gave her such awful diarrhea she missed 3 whole days of chores. Still, anything is better than nothing. Here's your fringe fact. People believed that bad air, miasma, caused disease. Not germs, not bacteria. Just air gone wrong. If a room smelled bad, it meant death was floating in it. Hence the herbs, the incense, the bundles of lavender hung from rafters. The smoke from the fire, not just for heat. It was protection. Probably. Your mother sleeps most of the day after drinking the tea. You tend the fire. You help your sister sort the dried beans. You sweep out the floor with a broom that's more stick than bristle. But you keep glancing over, watching her chest rise, counting the time between breaths, just in case. By evening she's coughing again. Outside the cold presses harder. You hear someone vomiting next door. Your neighbour, the one with 7 kids and no husband, has been sick for a week now. Her eldest came begging for firewood 2 days ago. Said their hearth went out and they were all sleeping in one bed like salted fish. You remember when the plague came through years ago? You were just a child, but you remember the carts, the masks, the sudden, horrifying silence that hung in the streets. It hasn't come back since, but everyone says it's not gone. It's just sleeping, waiting for a weak year. And this winter, it's feeling pretty weak. You ask Alna if it could be plague. She laughs so hard she snorts. If it were plague, child, she says, you wouldn't be asking questions. You'd be digging graves. And she's not wrong. Still, disease is disease, and even the small ones kill. You've seen people die from toothaches, from infected blisters, from stepping on a sharp stick. The body is a fragile thing, and in winter it has fewer weapons. Scholars still debate the average lifespan in the Middle Ages. Some say it was 35, others insist it's misleading because of high infant mortality. But what no one debates is this. If you got sick in winter, your odds dropped fast. You wish you had garlic, or onions. People swear they ward off infection. Your mother used to hang garlic braids over the door. Not for cooking, for protection. You haven't had garlic in over a year. The last bulb sprouted in storage and turned into a mushy, foul-smelling mess. You can't sleep that night. Your mother wheezes softly. You sit up near the fire, poking at the logs. You wrap a shawl around your shoulders and watch the flames rise and fall. You wonder what she'll look like if she dies. You wonder if the healer will take your hat as payment, or if she'll want something more personal. A boot, a keepsake, maybe your mother's shawl. You hate this. You hate winter. You wake up with your cheek against the floor and the sour taste of ash in your mouth. You don't even remember falling asleep, just poking at the fire, until your eyes got heavy, your body sagged, and sleep took over like a thief in the night. It's morning now, probably. The light through the greased window is pale and bluish, like the inside of a bruise, and your neck hurts, a lot. But before you can stretch or complain, you hear it. Your mother snoring softly. She's still breathing. You sit up slowly, careful not to jolt the moment. Her cheeks are flushed, which might mean the fever's breaking, or rising. But either way, she's warm and alive, and not coughing for once. You glance toward the door, no sign of Alna. Maybe she left before dawn, as quiet as the snow falling outside. You roll your aching shoulders, pull your cloak tighter and start the fire. The wood from yesterday burns hot and fast, a rare luxury. You warm your hands and stare at the flames, your face numb, but your chest just a little lighter than it was yesterday. You don't smile, there's no room for that, but you breathe a little deeper. Then you hear the drip, not from the ceiling this time, from the wall. You turn your head and spot it, your cloak hanging by the door, still soaked from yesterday's wood run. A wet patch spreads beneath it, a tiny puddle slowly freezing into the dirt floor. It smells terrible. Which brings us to the question no one ever asks about medieval winter. What did people actually wear? Short answer, not enough. Long answer, let's talk fashion. You shuffle over to your bundle of winter clothes, which is really just a pile of fabric that has gradually turned into a small, damp, itchy ecosystem. You select today's outfit with all the enthusiasm of someone picking which wooden spoon they'd most like to be beaten with. Layers are key. They don't insulate so much as delay the freezing. First goes the linen shirt. It's scratchy and stained and so thin it may actually be see-through in the right light. Not that there's any danger of that here. Then comes the wool tunic, which is heavy and lumpy and smells faintly of lanolin and failure. You wrap your legs in separate wool strips, chausses if you want to get technical, which act like homemade leggings. They slide around constantly. You tie them tight anyway. Then comes your surcoat, basically a medieval hoodie if the hoodie was full of holes and sadness. And over all that, your cloak, which is still wet. You pull it on anyway, you have to. Wet warmth is better than no warmth. You tie it at the throat with a leather cord and immediately feel like a soggy knight. A very underpaid, underfed, unarmed knight. You wrap your feet in fresh rags. Yesterday's are stiff and crispy. You stuff your feet into boots that used to be leather but now feel more like frozen stew. And on your hands, mittens made from cut-up sheepskin. They don't fit. They're two different sizes, but they mostly cover your fingers. You glance at yourself in a bit of polished metal, a sorry excuse for a mirror. You look like a scarecrow who's been dragged through a swamp, which is to say, you look normal. Let's not pretend medieval winter fashion was glamorous. Wool was king, of course. Everyone wore it. It was warm, water-resistant, and available, kind of. Spinning it took forever. Weaving it took longer. Dyeing it, even worse. Most people couldn't afford colour, so you end up with a palette of browns, greys, greens, and the occasional sickly yellow. Everyone looks like a sad potato. And then there's fur. Ah yes, medieval fur. Not the high society, fashionable trimmed kind. That was for nobles. Fox, ermine, sable. Pretty, expensive, symbolic. If you saw someone in a white fur cloak with a jewelled clasp, chances are they were either royalty or about to be assassinated. You? You have goat. Goat fur is coarse and smells weird when wet. It keeps the wind off though, especially when lined around your hood. Your cousin wears squirrel. 6 tiny skins stitched together into a patchwork shrug. It doesn't do much, but he claims it gives him speed. You're not convinced. Here's a fun fringe fact. Some folks wore felted garments, wool beaten and matted until it was almost armour-like. Tough, windproof, and about as flexible as a frozen baguette. There are even records of people using hair, human hair, woven into cloaks or mittens. Resourceful? Yes. Comforting? Not so much. You adjust your hood and step outside. The snow is falling again. Light. Fine flakes this time, more like dust than snow. It coats everything in a soft powder, disguising the world in a thin layer of silence. You pass your neighbour, Agnes, on the path. She's bundled in what might once have been a blanket, tied with bits of rope and pinned with a bone clasp. Her boots are wrapped in cabbage leaves for insulation. She nods at you like it's the most normal thing in the world. You nod back, because it is. The real kicker is that clothes don't dry in winter. Once something gets wet, it stays wet, sometimes for days. You hang it near the fire and hope. But between the smoke, the steam, and the raw cold, your cloak ends up smelling like mouldy sausages. It clings to your back like a barnacle, and heaven help you if you fall through the ice or get caught in freezing rain. Hypothermia is a real threat, even if no one calls it that yet. People just say you took chill. That's what happened to Tom last winter. Fell into the stream, got out, said he was fine, laughed about it, died 2 days later, turned blue from the inside out. So yeah, you wear what you have. You mend what you can. You patch everything until the patch is more garment than the original. You trade scraps. You sleep in your clothes. Sometimes you never take them off all season. Layers of sweat, smoke, skin and dirt, all marinating together like a human stew. And you dream of spring, of taking everything off and washing it in warm water, hanging it in the sun, wearing dry linen for the first time in months. But for now, you pull your hood tighter. You head to the common well to fetch water. The rope creaks, the bucket slips into the icy dark, and your hands go numb as you pull it back up. You carry it home carefully, trying not to spill, trying not to slip. Inside, your mother is awake and sipping broth. She smiles when she sees you. "Still alive," she croaks. "Barely," you say, setting the bucket down. She nods. "Good enough." And for today, it is. You're starting to think church might actually kill you. Not the religion part. That's harmless enough. Mostly singing and muttering, and the occasional terrifying sermon about the end of days. No, it's the building. Specifically, the stone, cavernous, utterly unheated mass of misery that is your local chapel. Today is Sunday, which means you're expected to drag your half-frozen, underfed body out of your hut, wrap yourself in every article of clothing you own, yes, again, and trudge through the snow with your family to spend the better part of the morning in a glorified freezer box. You're going to worship the Lord, and you're going to shiver while doing it. The sky is a dull, heavy grey. You've seen laundry water with more personality. The snow underfoot crunches like stale bread crust, and the wind seems specifically targeted to find the one gap in your cloak's neckline. You wonder if your left ear is still attached. Hard to tell. No feeling in it for hours. The church looms up ahead, a squat stone building with a crooked bell tower and a roof patched with mismatched tiles. It was built 100 years ago and looks like it's been cold ever since. You step inside and immediately regret your life choices. It's darker than you remembered, and colder. There are windows, technically, long slits in the stone with bits of stained glass that let in just enough light to remind you how dim it is. The air smells of damp stone, old wood, wax smoke, and people. Not fresh people. Winter people. The kind who haven't bathed in weeks and are now packed together for warmth and redemption. The pews are rough benches, all warped and splintery. You sit with your family and try to wedge yourself between your father and sister, hoping to siphon a little body heat. It's not working. The stone beneath your feet is so cold it might actually be leaching warmth from your soul. And then the priest starts. He's wearing layers, of course, thick wool robes, a heavy stole, and what looks like fur-trimmed gloves with the fingers cut out so he can flip the pages of his manuscript. His nose is red. His breath steams as he chants. He sounds like he's got a mouthful of cotton and regret. The sermon is about suffering. Of course it is. You try to focus, really. But your brain is busy screaming at you about how every part of your body is freezing. Your feet ache. Your back hurts. Your nose won't stop dripping, and you can't wipe it because your mittens are too crusty. You try sniffing quietly. Your cousin glares at you. You glare back. Holy war. Eventually your mind wanders, as it always does during sermons, and you start thinking about something ridiculous like, how did they build this place without freezing to death? Because this chapel, it's all stone, heavy, dense, practically eternal. No insulation, no chimney, no fire. Just cold on cold, echoing every cough and creaking board. Scholars say churches were designed this way on purpose, to make you feel small and humbled before God, to draw your eyes up to heaven, to remind you of the weight of eternity. Mission accomplished. You feel like a very cold, very small worm. Here's your quirky historical twist. People actually believed the cold was holy, that suffering, especially in sacred spaces, brought you closer to God. Warmth was indulgent. Pain was piety. So you sat there, freezing your butt off, praying with numb lips and frostbitten toes, because it meant you were virtuous. Monks took this to the next level. In some orders, they refused to heat their chambers at all. The scriptoriums, where they copied manuscripts, were so cold that ink froze. Literally, that's not a metaphor. Ink froze mid-sentence. Monks would hold the inkwells in their armpits or set them near a candle, hoping to get through a psalm before their quill shattered. One monk from the 12th century even wrote in the margin of a manuscript, "Oh, my hand is stiff with writing. Alas!" You feel that, Brother Gerald. Deeply. But back to church. Communion is happening, which means the priest is breaking off pieces of what vaguely resembles bread, flat, dense, dry as dust, and offering it out with frozen fingers. You watch him wince when he drops a chunk. It bounces once and disappears under the altar. Nobody speaks of it again. The wine is room temperature. Unfortunately, room temperature in a stone church in December is somewhere between brisk and liquid punishment. You sip it anyway. It tastes sour. But it's alcohol, technically, and for a brief moment you feel the illusion of warmth slide down your throat. Glorious. Then someone sneezes violently behind you and the illusion dies. By the time the service ends, your legs have gone entirely numb. You shuffle out with the crowd like a very cold, very solemn parade of zombies. No one speaks, no one smiles, just heads down, boots crunching, arms wrapped tight. A holy retreat. You get home and throw your cloak near the fire, it sizzles. A puff of steam rises from the hem. You sit so close to the flames your eyebrows feel threatened, but you don't care. Anything to get that cold out of your bones. Your mother says her fever's gone. Her voice is clearer. She's even managed to braid her hair. A good sign. You tell her church was dreadful. She nods like, obviously. She says, God doesn't care how cold your feet are. You reply, He should. She laughs. A rare, lovely sound. But you're still thinking about that chapel, about the people who built it, about how long it must have taken, the stones, the scaffolding, the labour, all in a world with no insulation, no central heating, no glass worth a damn, and still, they gathered there, every week, every Sunday, shivering together, singing through chattering teeth, freezing, yes, but together. It's miserable, and weirdly, beautiful. The thing about winter in the Middle Ages is that it doesn't let up. It just switches tactics. Today, it's playing psychological warfare. You wake to the scent of something amazing, something unreal. It punches through the usual wall of smoke, sweat, and goat with the intensity of a hallucination. Your stomach lurches awake before your eyes do. You sit up. Someone's cooking meat. Real meat. You scramble to your feet. Okay, your knees buckle, and you hobble like a baby deer, but eventually you make it to the fire where your mother is stirring something in the pot. You lean over it, and there it is. The rich, unmistakable smell of protein and fat simmering into magic. It's not much, but compared to your usual winter fare, turnips, mouldy bread, sadness, it might as well be a royal feast. What is this, you ask, voice barely hiding the awe. Pigeon, she says deadpan. Maybe. Could be squirrel. You blink. Honestly. Doesn't matter. This is what's known as a feast day. Not the big ones. This isn't Christmas or Easter. But it's St. Nicholas's Day, and in your village that's cause for a little celebration. Or more accurately, a slight loosening of the starvation routine. It's one of those strange medieval ironies. People celebrated more in winter, even when they had less. There's something about facing death on a daily basis that makes you want to party, even if you're doing it with frostbitten fingers and a spoon carved from bone. Feast days mean a break from fasting, or at least a bit of levity. The church calendar is stuffed with saints' days, holidays, vigils, and holy days, many of which became excuses to, if not actually indulge, then at least pretend you're indulging. Today, some lucky family traded a small bundle of dried herbs and a very worn cloak for a bit of preserved meat, and now the whole neighbourhood is sharing. That's the thing about these moments, they're communal. Even if you only get 3 bites, you get to eat them together. Your father comes in carrying a jug. It's mead, weak and watery, but it's warm. He passes it around like it's sacred. You sip, feel the honey hit your tongue, and for a moment, you forget you haven't had a full night's sleep in a week. You forget your cloak is still damp. You forget that your socks are made of shredded old bedding tied with twine. This is bliss. Medieval bliss. Which is like regular bliss, but with more steam and less vitamin C. People start arriving. Neighbours, cousins. That guy you're not related to, but who always shows up with a song. The room fills with people, breath fogging in the air, laughter bouncing off the stone hearth. Someone pulls out a lute that's missing a string, and someone else claps along. A baby cries. Someone sneezes directly into the fire. It's chaos, but it's warm. You all eat from wooden bowls and trenchers, basically flat pieces of bread used as plates. Once the food's gone, you chew on the trencher itself. That's the second course. You're not wasting carbs in this economy. And the food? Surprisingly good. Pigeon or squirrel no one's checked too closely, stewed with barley, onion and something vaguely green. There's hard cheese, cracked and crumbling but sharp and tangy. A dense, chewy pie filled with bits of dried fruit and animal fat. Mincemeat, medieval style. Sweet, savoury, greasy, perfection. Here's a weird fact to chew on while you chew. Medieval mincemeat actually contained meat. It was only later, centuries down the line, that it became the weird, meaty fruit Frankenstein dessert we know today. But back in your hut, it's a lifesaver, and it tastes like celebration. Of course, no feast would be complete without a little drama. Halfway through the second round of stew, someone says something about someone else's pig going missing last week. The room tenses. There's a whole subplot of pork theft in the village right now, and tensions are tender. Eyes dart. Accusations hover like gnats. Your cousin kicks you under the table and mutters, "Bet it was Jared." Jared hears him. You brace for shouting. Instead, there's laughter, loud, brash, and probably alcohol-fueled. Jared raises his bowl in a toast. "If I did steal your pig," he slurs, "I cooked it better than this pigeon." Everyone laughs, too hard. Because that's what you do when things are fragile. You laugh too loud, drink too fast, and eat like it's your last chance. Because it might be. That's the truth of winter feasting in the Middle Ages. There's no moderation. There's no balance. It's feast or famine, often both, back to back. You might eat meat today and lick the inside of a turnip tomorrow. You might share your bread crust with a stranger one morning and fight that same man for firewood by nightfall. Historians like to point out the religious rhythms of the time. Feast days interspersed with fasts, Lent, Advent, Ember days. A constant pendulum swinging between denial and indulgence. But that's the church's version. The peasant version is simpler. Eat while you can, pray while you chew. Laugh before the frost returns. By late afternoon the stew's gone, the mead is mostly backwash. People start trickling home, bellies full, faces flushed, cloaks reeking of smoke and meat and happiness. It's not a holiday in the way modern people might understand, but it's a relief, and that's close enough. You stay behind to help clean. Your sister scrapes the pot with a stick, trying to rescue the last bits. Your father wraps what's left of the cheese in a cloth and stashes it in the corner. It'll last a few more days. Maybe. Your mother, still pale but stronger, thanks the neighbours as they leave. She says, "We'll return the favour come Epiphany," and you silently hope something miraculous happens between now and then, like a second pig, or a cow falling from the sky. When the door shuts and silence returns, it hits you how exhausted you are. Not just from the eating and noise, but from the hope of it all. It takes effort to believe in better days. You crawl into bed and burrow under the blankets, full in that slightly uncomfortable way, with your stomach stretched just beyond its usual limits. You close your eyes. The fire is still glowing. The air smells like wood smoke and fat, and outside the snow keeps falling. Quiet now, but not gone. Never gone. You wake in the middle of the night to shouting. At first you think it's another argument over missing pigs, or maybe Jared's sense of humour finally earned him a black eye. But then you hear the distinct clang of metal on metal. Not the friendly kind. Not the village blacksmith working late. Weapons. You sit up, heart thudding. Your sister's already awake, eyes wide in the darkness. Your father is by the door, pulling on his boots, grabbing the iron poker again, his default weapon for every emergency, whether wolves, sickness, or whatever fresh hell this is. Your mother whispers for you to stay inside. She always says that. You never do. You shove on your cloak, still cold from the night before, and creep to the door. Your breath clouds instantly. Outside, the snow is bathed in moonlight and torchlight. Shadows move. Not wolves this time. Men. They're on horseback. Not many. Half a dozen maybe, but armed. They're wearing cloaks with hoods pulled low, swords at their sides, and expressions that are either bored or aggressive, depending on how much food they've had lately. You recognise the crest on their clothing, a minor lord's colours from the next year over. They are not supposed to be here. And yet, here they are, demanding food, demanding fuel. One of them laughs when your neighbour refuses, the kind of laugh that usually ends with someone bleeding. Your father steps out to stand between them and your house. He's brave like that, or foolish. The difference gets blurrier every year. One of the riders dismounts. He's young, cocky, and chewing something, probably arrogance. He points to the shed where your family keeps the salted meat, which is mostly bones by now. "We'll take what's left," he says casually, like he's discussing the weather. Your father says no. The rider shrugs, and then punches him. Your sister screams. Everything erupts at once, men shouting, your cousin running to grab a stick, a chicken flapping wildly out of the coop, as if trying to escape not just the chaos but the century itself. You're shoved backward by someone's elbow and hit the side of the hut, dazed. By the time your vision clears, the riders are already galloping out of the village, cloaks streaming behind them, leaving nothing behind but churned up snow and a trail of humiliation. Your father stands, holding his jaw. His lip is bleeding. He spits into the snow and wipes his mouth with the back of his hand. No one says anything for a long time, and that right there is winter warfare, medieval edition. No grand battles, no drums and banners, just little shows of power, small raids, stolen resources, violence scaled to your street, soldiers, knights, or local goons showing up when no one can fight back. 'Cause winter isn't just about the cold, it's about vulnerability. And you're as vulnerable as it gets. Contrary to what some people think, wars didn't stop in winter, they just got meaner. Scholars argue about how often battles happened in the snow. Some say armies slowed down in cold months. Others point out records of sieges and skirmishes deep into December, even January. The key isn't whether wars stopped, it's how the tactics changed. Less open combat, more pillaging, more harassment, more freezing civilians. And when the men on horseback don't come, your own people do the damage. Winter breeds paranoia. You saw it last year when someone accused old Lisa of hoarding grain. Her chimney smoked too often, they said. Her cheeks looked too pink. Must be fattening up in secret. She denied it. They didn't care. They stormed her hut, tore it apart, found nothing, apologised by leaving her a single onion. She froze to death 2 weeks later. You sit by the fire now, wrapping your fingers around a cup of hot broth, trying to stop shaking, from the cold, from the fear, from the realisation that the food you thought you'd stretched so carefully can be taken in minutes by someone bigger, hungrier, or better armed. And there's no one to stop them. No police, no guards, no cavalry arriving at the last moment with justice and warm blankets. Just your neighbours, your kin, your own hands. You tend your bruised father, Your sister makes a poultice from leftover herbs. He winces as she applies it, but says nothing, just chews the inside of his cheek and stares into the fire. Could have been worse, he mutters eventually. And that's the mantra, isn't it? Winter's favourite phrase. Could have been worse. Could have burned the village. Could have taken your sister. Could have left with the chickens. Could have come back with friends. But they didn't. Yet. And so you sweep up the snow from where the scuffle trailed into the hut. You pick up a dropped glove. Someone else's, not yours. Probably worth trading. You put it in your pocket. Fringe fact for your mental survival kit. Some medieval villages built snow walls, makeshift barriers of packed snow and ice, not for defence, but to funnel intruders or block visibility. They didn't last long, just enough to buy time. You wonder if your village could manage something like that. Then again, you've seen how hard it is to get people to agree on anything. The next day, people talk, of course, softly, with sidelong glances. Some say it was a test. Others say those weren't soldiers at all, just thieves playing pretend. One guy claims he saw a black mark on one of their horses, a sign of a curse. You let the stories swirl. People need stories to hold on to, something to make sense of random violence. You stay quiet, and you keep watch. You spend the next few nights taking turns with your cousin, sitting near the window with a knife in hand and a pot of hot stones at your feet. You're not really guarding anything, just holding the illusion of control. Because in winter, power means something different. It's not about strength, it's about heat, food, shelter, numbers, and the willingness to fight for them. You still wear the bruise on your shoulder from that night. It's faded to greenish yellow now, a strange badge of survival. You flex your fingers and watch the snow fall again outside the door. Just once, you'd like to see the world covered in white and not immediately feel dread. But not this year. Not in this winter. You spend the next few days watching the fire like it owes you something. And honestly, it kind of does. You feed it carefully. Just enough kindling to keep the coals alive, not enough to waste. Every branch, every stick, every shard of splintered stool leg is rationed like gold. Your father sharpens the hatchet every evening, muttering about the good old days when trees were just outside the village and wolves still feared people. You've heard that one before, because now the trees are far, or at least the good ones, the kind that aren't rotted through or already picked clean. And firewood is no longer something you gather, it's something you fight for. No one delivers it. There's no medieval Instacart where you swipe for a neatly bundled pile of seasoned oak. You go out, you find it, you drag it back, or you freeze. Welcome to Fuel Acquisition Medieval Edition. You bundle up for another wood run, same outfit, same foot wraps. This time, your gloves are stuffed with dried moss to patch the holes in the fingertips. Not for warmth, just so you can still grip something without turning your hands into ice slabs. Your cousin joins you again. You both carry crude sleds, flat planks with rope handles and dreams of being useful. The snow is deeper today, hard-packed in some places, slushy in others. You can't tell what you're stepping on until it gives out beneath your weight. You head out past the village edge, following the familiar deer track through the woods. The same one the wolves use. You don't talk about that. If you say wolf in the woods, it's like handing out invitations. The trees groan overhead. Branches heavy with snow creak and snap. You pause every time the wind picks up, listening for footsteps that aren't yours. You keep a hand on the hatchet just in case. Eventually you find what might pass for luck. A fallen ash tree, partially buried, partially frozen, but not yet claimed. You both get to work, taking turns swinging the blade. It's exhausting. You sweat through your inner layers in minutes, even as your outer ones freeze. This is winter's other favourite trick. Wet clothes in sub-zero air. Your body gets warm from effort. Then your clothes absorb it. Then the wind returns. Boom! Ice sleeves. You take a break, crouching beside the tree, panting like a dog. Your cousin pulls out a piece of bread crust from his pocket. He bites off a corner and hands you the rest. It's hard enough to use as a weapon, but your teeth are stubborn. As you chew, you think about how ridiculous this is. All this work for fire, for a few more hours of warmth. And yet it's everything. Fire means life. It means hot broth. dry socks, no frostbite. It means light and safety, and the illusion, however brief, that you're winning against the season. Here's something wild. In some parts of Europe, people paid their rent in firewood. Not grain, not coin, wood. That's how valuable it was. Entire forests were razed to feed villages, monasteries, castles. If you had a woodlot, you were basically a forest baron. Back in the village, there's constant debate about who gets what. Some folks hoard, others trade, a few steal. If you don't have a forest claim, you trade what you can. Wool, food, favours. That one guy, Tom, with the good hair, he offers protection in exchange for a cut of your logs. Everyone knows what that means. No one talks about it. You finish cutting, stack the sled, and begin the slow drag home. The weight is brutal. The sled gets caught on roots, tips on slopes, sinks in drifts. Your arms scream. Your back bends. You curse every tree in Europe. But when you make it back, dragging your frozen prize into the yard, there's a moment, just a flash, where you feel powerful. You made warmth happen. Your family comes outside to help unload. The fire is revived to a strong dancing flame. Your sister sings a bit as she pokes it. The steam from the cooking pot smells faintly of onion and optimism, and just for a little while it's enough, until you remember that wood burns fast. 1 log lasts an hour if you're lucky. 2, if you really stretch it. If it's green or damp, forget it. It'll hiss and spit, and the smoke will choke you before it ever heats the room. That's another thing, smoke is constant. Your hut doesn't have a chimney, just a hole in the roof and some vague hope. The smoke goes up. Sometimes. Other times it swirls around like it owns the place. It stings your eyes, clogs your lungs, settles in your clothes and hair. You wake up coughing, and you go to bed coughing, and yet you're grateful for every puff of it, because it means the fire is still alive. There's a saying in the village, if the hearth is warm, death waits its turn. Morbid, maybe, but accurate. Later that evening the wind howls again. Snow slaps against the door like angry hands. You put on extra socks, more rags really, and settle in close to the fire with your bowl of turnip stew. The glow paints your faces in gold and shadow. Your father snores softly. Your mother hums. The warmth feels earned, and outside the world is black and white and brutal. But you've got fire, so you've got a chance. You break your tooth on a piece of bread. Not a metaphor, not an exaggeration. Just a perfectly average day in winter when your jaw meets a crust of rye that's been sitting out too long. Read, more than 6 hours, and your molar loses the argument. It happens during breakfast. You're hunched over the fire, gnawing on what might once have been a humble little loaf, now transformed into a geological artifact. You take a bite, hear a crack, and suddenly your mouth feels like a blacksmith's anvil. You spit into your hand. Yup. Tooth? Well, part of one. You don't say anything at first. Just sort of sit there, blinking, tongue poking at the jagged edge like your brain can't quite accept what's happened. Then your sister notices your weird expression and says, "You look like you swallowed a nail." You open your mouth and show her. She grimaces. Ugh. Your father glances over, shrugs and mutters, "Should have dunked it in broth first." "Thanks, Dad. Welcome to medieval dental care," or, more accurately, the absolute lack of it. You've just entered a whole new level of winter misery. Your mother gives you a clove to chew on. It's supposed to numb the pain. It doesn't. It just makes your whole mouth taste like firewood and licorice. You can feel the throbbing already, like a drumbeat in your skull. And now, every time you bite down, you wince like someone's jabbing you with a knitting needle. Tooth pain in winter. That's a new flavour of medieval suffering. See, in the warmer months you might have found relief. Herbs, a poultice, even a friendly travelling barber surgeon willing to yank the offender out for a chunk of bread and a strong drink. But now, there's no one coming. There's nothing to be done. You'll just have to ride it out, and hope it doesn't get infected. Because in this world, that's how people die. Yes, from a tooth. Fringe fact. Toothworm was the popular belief about dental pain back then. People thought worms lived in your teeth and caused rot, decay, and that glorious grinding ache. Remedies included rinsing with vinegar, holding herbs to your jaw or, wait for it, smoking them out. Literally. Some folks would heat herbs, inhale the smoke, and then blow it directly into their mouths in the hope of evicting the worm. You're not desperate enough to try that yet. But you're getting there. The bread that broke your tooth was made from last year's rye. Stored too long, probably over-baked to ensure it didn't spoil, which it still might, because medieval bread could turn hard faster than you can say dental catastrophe. And this isn't your cosy bakery sourdough with crusty golden edges and fluffy middles. No, this is trencher bread. Coarse, heavy, and meant to last. Like a brick. Or a medieval punishment device. You remember once hearing a merchant brag about fine white bread, made from sifted flour, soft as clouds. You've never had it. That's for nobles, monasteries, or very lucky townsfolk. You get black bread. Heavy on the rye, heavy on the sawdust, light on the joy, and it gets worse in winter. Because there's less grain to go around. Bakers stretch the dough with whatever they can find. Ground up legumes, old barley, even chaff, the stuff normally thrown to the pigs. And yes, ground bones. Don't ask where they come from. No one wants to know. Bread becomes survival glue, not food. You once heard of a village where they used dirt. Yes, dirt mixed with flour. Not a myth. Clay-heavy soil, dried and powdered, added to bulk up loaves during famine years. It was called famine bread, and it'll absolutely wreck your insides and your teeth. You glance back at the hunk of bread on your plate. You briefly consider throwing it out the door, but then your stomach growls, loudly, betrayal. You sigh and dunk it into your broth, softens it, barely. The ache in your jaw is getting worse. You wrap a cloth around your head, tying it under your chin to hold your jaw in place. It helps, sort of. Now you look like an angry, underfed chipmunk. Later that morning you head to Alna, the village herbalist. Again. She looks up as you limp into her hut, then squints. Tooth? You nod. She smirks. Let me guess. Black bread. You hold up the offending chunk. She takes it, sniffs it, then throws it into the fire. Like it's cursed. She gives you a bitter root to chew which makes your tongue go numb but does nothing for the pain. Then she tries to apply hot wax to the tooth to seal it. You let her. You're a shell of a person. By the time you leave, your mouth is numb, your hands are frozen, and the pain is still there, but more spread out. Like a warm blanket of misery over your entire head. Historians still argue over whether medieval people had worse teeth than we do now. Some say yes, no brushing, no dentists, and a diet full of hard, unrefined carbs. Others argue that because they didn't have modern sugar, their teeth were actually better. Until things went bad, and then they went very bad. As in, rotting in your skull, dripping pus. Why does my face smell like death? Bad. You crawl into bed early. It's not even full dark yet, but you can't focus. Your jaw is pulsing. Your mouth tastes like mouldy licorice and dirt, and your head feels like it's full of angry bees. Your sister tries to make you laugh. She tells you the story of the time your uncle tried to pull out his own molar using a fishhook and some string. It ended with him fainting and the tooth still attached. You don't laugh, but you do snort, then wince, then curse. Before bed, your mother gently pats your head and offers you another clove. You take it, because you're weak, and because you're terrified of what happens next if it doesn't get better. Abscesses, fevers, blood poisoning. In this century, a toothache can kill you. You close your eyes, jaw throbbing, fire hissing quietly, and you dream of soft bread. Warm, fluffy, blessedly tooth-friendly bread. A mythical thing, like dragons, or a winter without pain. You're not even hungry, but you eat anyway, because that's the rule in winter. If it's warm and vaguely edible, you eat it. Doesn't matter if it's your favourite food or something that smells like wet socks left under a pig. Doesn't matter if you just had a bowl of it yesterday, or this morning, or for the last 6 meals. You eat, because you don't know when the next pot's going to bubble. Tonight's menu? Something your father is calling bone soup. You peek in the pot. Yep, that's a bone. One. Floating in a cloudy yellowish broth with flecks of green that might be herbs, or might be moss. You try not to stare too hard. Your mother adds a chunk of stale bread to thicken it. It disintegrates on impact. Somewhere in there, you spot the edge of a carrot. A miracle! The bone, picked clean days ago, rattles as it spins lazily in the stew. It looks like it's judging you, and yeah, you eat it anyway. Because in the Middle Ages, cooking in winter isn't so much about flavour as it is about not dying. There's a definite difference between food and fuel. What you're eating now, it's fuel. Low quality, watery, mostly symbolic, but it's hot. It fills your belly. It delays the hunger, even if it doesn't kill it. You chew slowly, carefully. Your jaw still aches from yesterday's tooth disaster. You avoid the crustier bits and hope nothing sharp got into the pot. Bone splinters in soup are a real thing, and people have choked on them. Your cousin almost did last year. Now he chews like a suspicious rat. After dinner you lick the bowl. Everyone does. You even scrape it with your finger, swipe the inside, then suck the last of it off. Not because you're gross, because you're practical. Every drop counts. You glance at the shelf near the hearth. That's where the rest of the food lives, if you can call it that. A bundle of onions, wrinkled, soft in places. A sack with some dried beans that take 2 hours to cook and taste like regret. A tin with salt, barely enough to season a whisper, and a jar of something. You think it used to be cheese, or butter, maybe glue. Whatever it is, it's growing its own winter coat. Tomorrow you'll try something new. Stone soup. No, not the fairy tale. Not the one where the villagers all pitch in. You don't have villagers like that. This version is more literal. Heat a stone in the fire, drop it in the pot to keep the water hot longer. It adds no flavour, no calories, but it makes it feel like you're doing something clever. This is how people survive winter here. Improvisation, delusion, and a dangerous sense of humour. Your uncle once made a stew out of candle wax and crushed acorns. Said it tasted a little woody but rich. He's not entirely stable, but he's still alive, so who's judging? Another neighbour boiled leather. An old belt softened in water, scraped, then cooked down with onions. Called it cow jelly. The trick was not to think about where it had been. Here's a fun and disturbing fringe fact. People sometimes ate dirt, clay specifically, called geophagy, supposedly to settle the stomach, sometimes for minerals, sometimes because it was there. If you're wondering how it tasted, imagine licking the side of a cold stone and chewing it for 20 minutes. Now do that during a snowstorm. You know things are bad when the recipes start to involve parts of animals no one talks about. You've had blood pudding before, thick, iron-tasting, solid at room temperature. You've had tripe, intestines, hooves boiled into jelly. Your mother once made something she called head stew. You asked no questions. One time you found a medieval recipe tucked in the back of a book in the chapel, something monks used when food stores ran low. Pigeon, turnips, dried mushrooms, vinegar, and flour. Sounded normal, until you got to the note. If no meat be found, the bones of old beasts may be boiled twice and pounded into broth. Translation, eat your leftovers. Scholars love to wax poetic about the resourcefulness of medieval cooking. And yeah, okay, there's creativity in figuring out how to turn pine bark into a food substitute, or how to dry nettles into something that won't kill you. But the truth is, most people weren't cooking because they wanted to impress the nobility. They were cooking because starving with a hot meal was still better than starving with a cold one. Lent makes it worse. 40 days of fasting during winter, no meat, no dairy, no eggs. You try convincing a frostbitten farmer to give up cheese when it's all he has between him and death. Still, people obeyed, or said they did. Some villages had creative interpretations of fasting, including soaking bacon in vinegar and calling it a vegetable. Back at the fire, your father sharpens a knife that hasn't seen meat in 2 weeks. Habit, or hope. You watch the sparks fly and think about what you'll eat tomorrow. Maybe more bone broth. Maybe a turnip if you're lucky. Maybe a rat. That's not a joke. There's been talk. You remember last year when the rats got into the grain stores and your neighbour caught a few. Skinned them, roasted them, served them with garlic and herbs like it was a holiday roast. You tried some. Didn't taste bad. Didn't taste like anything. Chewy, salty, slightly furry, despite best efforts. You've learned that you can get used to anything, even food that makes your soul cry. You clean your bowl and set it aside. Someone burps. Someone else groans and lies back on the floor, rubbing their stomach like they've just eaten a 10-course feast. You all laugh, because you're either laughing or screaming. Outside, the wind picks up. You can hear it shaking the door, howling down the chimney like a beast demanding to be fed. You'd feed it if you could. The soup pot is empty. You lie down next to your sister and pull the blanket up over your head, and you dream, again, of roasted chicken, fresh bread, warm stew with chunks of meat that don't require a magnifying glass to find, a full belly, a warm room, a second helping, and you wonder if anyone, anywhere, has ever eaten enough. You hear them before you see them. A low growling yelp, then another and another. Not like last time, when it was 1 or 2 wolves testing the edge of the village in the dark. This is more, louder, closer. The kind of sound that makes the hairs on your neck rise before your brain even understands why. You throw off your blanket and rush to the door. Your father's already up, slipping into his boots with the same tight, jaw-clenched look he had the night those armed men came. Your mother's ushering the little ones to the far end of the hut behind the fire, shielding them with her arms like they're sheep in the middle of a storm. Your cousin runs past the window yelling, "Wolves at the pen! They've come back!" You don't hesitate. You grab a torch from beside the hearth and stab it into the fire until it catches. The flames rise fast, smoke licking the ceiling. Your cloak is already on. You've started sleeping in it like everyone else, and your boots are tied with a rope, but they'll do. You fling the door open and plunge out into the cold. It hits you like a slap. That sharp, bitter wall of air, so dry and cold it feels like it's sanding your skin off. The snow is knee-deep, untouched until this moment, glittering under the half-moon like powdered glass. But it's the noise that gets you. Snarls, screams, chickens shrieking, dogs barking from somewhere, maybe from old Derek's place, though his mutt is usually too old to stand up in this weather. Now it's barking like it means business. You sprint toward the noise, heart pounding in your ears, torch held high like it might matter. And there they are. Wolves. 5, maybe 6. Hard to count in the chaos. Big, too. Larger than you expected, thicker than dogs, all sinew and hunger. Their fur is patchy, matted with snow and mud. Their eyes reflect the firelight, glowing like little moons. They've already torn through the outer fence of the animal pen. A goat lies in the snow, its stomach torn open, steaming in the cold. One of the wolves has its head buried in the carcass, chewing with wild, rhythmic jerks. Your cousin throws a rock. Another villager runs forward with a pitchfork, jabbing it wildly in the air. The wolves snarl. One lunges. The man screams and stumbles back. You step in with your torch, waving it, shouting nonsense. The flames crackle and the wolves flinch, just slightly. One growls low, crouches like it's thinking about testing your resolve. You keep waving the torch like an idiot with a death wish. More villagers arrive. Someone's banging a pan. Someone else starts shouting prayers. Together the noise grows, and finally, the wolves retreat. Not panicked. Not even scared, really. Just finished. They melt back into the woods like smoke, leaving behind silence, blood, and a trail of paw prints heading into the trees. You stand there for a long moment, catching your breath. The torch flickers in your hand. You realize your fingers are so cold you can't feel them anymore. You flex them, but there's only dull pain, like they've been filled with rocks. You look down at the goat. It was your last one. Your sister arrives a few minutes later, breathless, eyes wide. She sees the scene and just stops. No words, no tears, just acceptance. This is the winter language now. It speaks in losses. You all drag the goat's carcass to the edge of the village, where the midden is piled high under a crust of snow. There's not enough meat left to cook. The entrails are mostly gone. The rest is torn too badly. You bury it under frozen hay and try not to think about the waste. By the time you get back to the house, the fire's nearly dead. You feed it your torch and it flares up again. You warm your hands, then check your toes. Still there, just barely. Blackened at the edges. Not good. You sit down, exhausted, and someone wraps a blanket around your shoulders. Your father. He doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. This wasn't a surprise. The wolves always come eventually. It's not like in the stories where they're cunning, majestic, lone creatures of the forest. These wolves, they're desperate. Winter pushes them beyond instinct. They travel in loose, ragged packs. They eat trash. They test doors. They chew leather if it smells like meat. And yes, they eat people. Not often, but it's happened. The stories are real. In some years, entire families were found half-eaten in their huts. The doors clawed through, the windows broken. In France, there were reports of wolf attacks inside city walls. In Germany, records of wolves attacking funeral processions. Funeral processions. As if winter death wasn't dramatic enough. There's a legendary case from the 15th century. A wolf that took dozens of lives before it was finally tracked down and killed. People thought it was a werewolf. Others claimed it was the devil in disguise. Either way, it left a pile of bones and enough fear to keep the children indoors for years. Back in your village, the fear isn't mythical. It's just practical. You start working on reinforcing the fence the next morning. Not because you think it'll stop them. If wolves want in, they get in. But because it makes you feel like you're doing something. You weave new panels from fallen branches, patch holes with twine and cloth. Your cousin sharpens the pitchfork, and you set up a torch post, just one, at the edge of the pen. A tall stick wrapped in rag and soaked in tallow. You'll light it tonight. Hope it keeps them at bay. Hope it buys you a few more nights of peace, or at least warning, because that's what you're really doing now. You're not keeping wolves out. You're just trying not to be the easiest meal in the village. You don't talk about the fear, not out loud. But everyone knows it's there. It clings to the edge of every conversation. The way people glance toward the woods at night. The way they lean in when they speak, like the trees are listening. That night, after dinner, another thin broth with a few shredded carrot tops. You sit by the fire and polish a rock. Smooth and round, it was your sister's before the wolves came. She used to skip it on the river in summer. You hand it back to her. She turns it over in her fingers like it's a jewel. Then you both look toward the window. You can't see anything out there, but you know what's waiting. You can't feel your toes, like, not, haha, my toes are cold, can't feel them. You actually look down and check to make sure they're still attached. They are, technically, but they've gone numb, stiff, like frozen little stones stuffed into your boot wraps, and that dull ache climbing up from your foot. That's a bad sign. You don't say anything, of course. No one ever does. No one wants to be the one who says it out loud and makes it real. Frostbite. The village doesn't even have a word for it, not exactly. People just say, my fingers got bit, or the cold took one. You've seen it before. Pale skin that goes waxy, then grey, then black. Sometimes it's just the tips, fingers, toes, the edge of an ear. Other times when it goes deeper. A boy last winter lost 3 toes. He said it didn't even hurt at first. Said it felt kind of nice, honestly, after the burning ache went numb. Then, later, when they started turning colours, his mother tried everything. Hot water, herbs, bloodletting. They amputated with a saw and a prayer. He limps now. So yeah, you're definitely worried about your toes. You shuffle closer to the fire and stretch out your feet, carefully removing your boots, if you can call them that, and unwrapping the strips of cloth. The cold air bites, and your skin goes from white to angry red in seconds. You wince. Your sister glances over. She doesn't say anything, just passes you the hot stone from the hearth. You nod, press it gently against your foot, and hope the feeling comes back soon. Not all at once, though. That pins and needles sensation is like being chewed by ants. You've started noticing just how many people in the village have bandaged fingers, limps, dark spots on their cheeks or noses. Cold rot, some call it. Winter's kiss, others say, if they're feeling poetic, doesn't sound so lovely when it eats through your skin. You think about the monks up in the abbey. You heard once they had heated floors. Can you even imagine? Warm stones underfoot gently heated by the kitchens below. Probably a rumour. Probably nonsense. But oh, to believe in such things. Here's your fun and horrifying historical fact of the day. In some cases, medieval people used boiled urine to treat frostbite. Not a joke. Warm, sterile-ish, and free. Just one of many things in your world that shouldn't make sense, but somehow does. You poke at the fire. It's smaller today. There's not much wood left. Your cousin is out with the sled again. You hope he comes back soon, and not with a wolf on his heels. Your father returns a few hours later with news. Another villager lost a finger. Froze while chopping wood. Didn't notice until it broke off trying to grip the axe. You all nod. Quiet. Numb in more ways than one. You try to move as little as possible these days. Every errand is a risk. Every trip outside means chancing exposure. It doesn't even have to be snowing. Just cold. Wind slicing through your clothes like knives through paper. And the worst part, you stop feeling cold after a while. It sneaks up on you. You're shivering 1 minute, teeth chattering, and then nothing. Your body gives up, stops fighting. That's the real danger. You start to feel comfortable, heavy-limbed, sleepy. That's when people lie down in the snow and never get back up. There's a story, maybe true, maybe not, about a girl who wandered into the woods looking for firewood. They found her frozen stiff, arms cradled around a stump like she thought it was a pillow, a smile on her face. You don't go far alone anymore. Tonight you stay indoors. Your mother boils water with dried nettles. Tastes like old grass, but it's hot. You soak your feet in a pot near the fire. The pain when the feeling returns is blinding. You grip the bench so hard your knuckles go white, but you don't scream. That would give it too much power. Your father inspects your toes. Still good, he mutters. You nod, pretending that's enough. But you wrap them extra tight anyway. People always talk about the big dangers. Starvation, wolves, disease. But this slow, creeping decay, the way the cold erodes you bit by bit until you don't recognize your own hands, this is the real terror. You go to bed wearing all your clothes. You tuck your hands under your armpits. You press your feet against your sister's legs, even though she grumbles. It's worth the kick in the shin. And you dream, again, of heat. Not a fire, not a torch. Real heat. A sun you can feel through your bones. Warm water on your skin. Toes wiggling in soft grass. You wake with your jaw clenched, your mouth dry. Still winter, still here, still numb. You stretch your feet toward the embers. One of your toes looks off, slightly blue. You close your eyes and pretend not to see it. The scriptorium smells like ink and cold. You wouldn't think cold had a smell, but it does. It smells like wet wool, candle smoke, stale parchment, and that sharp metallic bite of air that sat too long in stone rooms. It smells like old wood and dry lungs and too many layers of silence. You're not a monk, not even close, but you've been sent to help copy texts at the abbey for the day. It's part of the winter barter system. You carry firewood, and in exchange they let you eat. The monks pretend it's charity. You know it's accounting, so here you are, fingers cracked, shoulders hunched, a quill in one hand, and a gob of frozen ink in the other. You dip the tip into the little clay pot. Nothing happens. Of course, the ink's frozen. Again. Brother Elric, sitting next to you, sighs loudly and sticks his ink pot under his robes. "Give it a minute," he mutters, his voice rasping like a broom on gravel. "My armpit's the warmest thing in this room." You nod. It's not even a joke. This is medieval winter in a monastery, and it's not quite the peaceful, candle-lit oasis your brain might have conjured up. Sure, it's quieter than the village, cleaner too, but warmer, not even a little. The scriptorium is long, narrow and full of groaning wood. Windows line the walls, but they're just openings with animal horn panes, translucent at best, draughty at worst. The wind slides through them like a thief, carrying flakes of snow into land delicately on your manuscripts. You're expected to gently blow them off, not smear them into ink. You've failed at this more than once. Your breath fogs in front of you. The tips of your fingers are red and blotchy. You can barely feel the quill between them, and still you write. Because someone, somewhere, believes copying the works of St. Augustine in January is a path to salvation. Honestly, you're just here for the bread. You squint at the Latin. You know just enough to not mess it up entirely. The letters are cramped, precise, painfully delicate. You drag the quill slowly, shaping each curve as best you can. The ink starts to flow, finely thawed from Brother Elric's questionable warming method. You keep writing. The word for suffering appears in the line. Passio. You underline it a little too hard. Brother Jerome coughs from across the room. A wet, hacking, possibly plague-adjacent cough. No one reacts. It's winter. Everyone's lungs are falling apart. Another monk sneezes into his sleeve, then keeps working. The ink smears a little across his parchment. He doesn't even flinch. And still, the room remains deathly quiet. No talking, no laughing. Just the scratching of quills, the occasional creak of wood, the dull crack of a frozen knuckle. It's meditative, also soul-crushing. You glance down at your page and realise your handwriting has taken a turn for the chaotic. Your fingers are stiffening again. You ball them into a fist, then flex. It hurts. Good. At least it means they're not frozen solid. There's a fringe fact for you. Monks used to write notes in the margins complaining about the cold. Tiny little rants, tucked beside holy texts. One wrote, "The cold is fierce tonight, and my hand is stiff with writing." Another scribbled, "Thank God it will soon be spring." You feel that on a spiritual level. There's even one that reads, "Oh, my hand." Same. Anonymous monk. Same. You stop to warm your fingers on a nearby candle. Not too close. Brother Elric once caught his sleeve on fire and spent 3 weeks explaining to the abbot why half a psalter had a singe mark. As far as warmth goes, the candles are a joke. Tallow, not beeswax. They smell like boiled sheep. The light flickers constantly, making the words on your parchment dance just enough to mess up your eyesight. If you needed glasses, well, too bad. You'd just be blind. Brother Thomas walks by and gently slaps your shoulder with a mittened hand. "Slow down," he whispers. "No one wants a sloppy gospel." Then he hands you a crust of bread and a slice of dried apple. A snack. You nearly cry. You eat it fast before anyone asks to share. The apple is tough as leather, the bread stale. It tastes like heaven. A debate has been swirling in your mind all morning. Why do they even bother? The monks, that is. Why copy these books in winter? Why not wait for spring when your fingers actually work? You asked Brother Elric once. He said, "Because the word of God doesn't wait for warm weather." You suspect it's more about deadlines. Still, there's something about it. The quiet determination. The persistence. Every letter scratched into parchment is an act of faith, or at least stubbornness. Either way, it's impressive, until someone farts, loudly, heroically, and the spell is broken. Brother Elric doesn't even try to hide his smirk. You snort, then immediately cough to cover it up. The sound echoes in the stone room like a trumpet. You go back to your writing, eyes stinging from holding back laughter. This is what winter does. It beats you down with cold and repetition and hunger, and then hands you one moment of absurdity to keep you going. By noon, the light has faded, because winter is greedy with its daylight. The monks begin packing up their tools. Parchments are rolled and stored, quills cleaned, ink pots capped. You hand your page over to Brother Thomas. He inspects it, nods, and presses a chunk of wax into your hand. It's your pay, candle wax. You try not to look disappointed. He adds a second chunk. You try not to look smug. Back at the village, your fingers are still cold. your toes still questionable, and your stomach is still empty. But tonight, the fire will burn a little brighter. Thanks, monks. You didn't save a soul today, but you did copy 6 pages of Ecclesiastes, and in winter, that counts. You're helping your cousin fix a hole in the barn wall when she suddenly says, "You think anyone falls in love in winter?" You blink, nail halfway to the board, hammer in hand. It's not what you expected to hear while standing knee-deep in snow, trying to keep the livestock from freezing to death. But here we are. You look at her. She shrugs. Seems like a bad time for romance, she adds, pulling her scarf tighter over her face. Too much chafing. She's not wrong. Winter is not sexy. Not in the Middle Ages. There's no cosy couples getaway, no moonlit strolls, no heart-carved trees or spontaneous declarations of love while wrapped in sheepskin. What you have instead is cold feet, damp underwear and shared lice. And yet, somehow, people still got married. In fact, you've heard there's a wedding happening next week 2 villages over. You'd laugh if your face weren't frozen. Marriage in the Middle Ages wasn't exactly about love, at least not most of the time. It was about survival, land, labour, children, alliances, food. The sheer practicality of it all was as romantic as a tax ledger. But in winter, everything is 10 times harder. You know what a winter wedding really means? It means trudging through snow to the church in stiff boots and ceremonial clothes you haven't grown into, or have already grown out of. It means saying your vows with frozen snot dripping down your face. It means trying to kiss your bride or groom while your lips are chapped and bleeding. You once saw a bride's veil literally freeze to her eyelashes during the blessing. She couldn't blink. But people still do it. Why? Because winter is slow, still, suspended. There's more time to think, to look, to decide. It's not planting season. You're not running from task to task. There are moments between the misery when people connect. Like your cousin and that baker's apprentice. You've seen the looks, the awkward bread deliveries, the sudden interest in helping with flour sacks. She hasn't said anything outright, but today's question was a giveaway. You think they'll get married, you ask? She shrugs again. If we make it to spring. Yup, there it is. Because even romance comes with a reality check in winter. Death is always in the room. Hunger makes everyone cautious. No one wants to plan a wedding when they're not sure if they'll be able to feed the guests or themselves next week. And yet, weddings do happen. Sometimes out of love. Sometimes because 2 families made a deal. Occasionally because someone got caught rolling in the hay before the banns were read, and now there's a priest holding a rope and a very pointed sermon. In winter, the ceremonies are short. The priest wants to get it over with. Everyone wants to get back inside. The feasts, if there is one, are smaller. Stew, bread, ale, maybe a bit of roasted meat if someone's lucky or sacrificial. You dance, but carefully. The floor is slippery. The music is off-key. But it's something. You remember one winter wedding 2 years ago where they actually lit a fire in the church? Total scandal. Smoke everywhere. Guests crying. Priest furious. But no one got frostbite, so the bride called it a win. There's a scholarly debate about how often people actually married in winter. Some argue that late autumn and early winter were common times, after the harvest, before Lent. Others insist most weddings waited until spring, but the records are foggy, and peasants didn't always bother with full church weddings anyway. You don't know anyone with a real dowry, not here, not in your village. Most of the time the bride price is a goat, or a sack of onions, maybe a sheepskin. You once saw a man offer his own cloak as part of a proposal. It was full of holes, but he said it was loyal. Sometimes people just start living together and hope no one makes a fuss. They call it common law now. Back then, it was just common sense. If the church had an issue, they could take it up when the weather was better. You glance over at your cousin. She's hammering now, hard, maybe harder than needed. So this baker's lad, you say. She freezes. You smile. She throws snow at you. It hits you square in the face. Cold water drips down your collar. You deserve that, she says, turning away, cheeks red, but not from the cold. It's a small thing. A tiny spark of something human in a season built to smother it. And in a way that's more romantic than any poetry. Two people finding time to joke, to flirt, to imagine a life past winter. Your sister once asked your mother why she married your father. Your mother didn't say love. She said, he brought firewood and didn't lie. You think about that sometimes. Not exactly swoon-worthy. But in this world, wood and honesty are hotter than roses. You finish patching the barn wall. Your cousin hums under her breath. A song about spring maybe. Or bread. Hard to tell. Back at the hut, your mother is boiling grain for dinner. Your father sits sharpening a knife. Again. You drop your tools and sit near the fire. The warmth hits you like a soft slap. You close your eyes and soak it in. And then from the other side of the room, your cousin says, if I get married, you're not giving a speech. You grin. Too late. I'm already writing one. She groans. But you both smile. Because even in the worst winters, people hope. They look towards spring. They make stupid promises. They fall in love. They propose with onions and bread. They survive together. Or they try to. And tonight you feel like maybe, just maybe, that's enough. You've noticed something strange lately. People are starting to get nervous about the calendar. Not because they forgot someone's birthday, those are loose concepts out here anyway, but because we've entered that time of winter where things start to feel off, weird, wrong in ways that are hard to explain. It's December, edging into January, and you can feel it in the air. Like the cold has started whispering. Not just freezing your body anymore, but scraping at your thoughts too. Your sister says she heard voices in the wind last night. Your cousin swears a shadow passed over the well even though nothing was flying. Your mother hangs garlic at the door even though you ran out of garlic 2 weeks ago. You don't ask where she got it. You just nod. This is what people call the devil season. The idea's old. Older than the church, some say. Older than the villages. Older than the fields. When December rolls around, people start lighting more candles, crossing themselves more often, muttering prayers under their breath even when no one's sick. Because winter isn't just hard, it's haunted. You've always felt it, this part of the year. When the nights stretch so long it feels like the sun's abandoned you. When the fire goes out faster. When sleep gets strange. You've had dreams lately. Not the nice ones with springtime and roast chickens. Dreams full of forests, eyes in the dark and laughing. Not people laughing. Something else. Something deep. You're not the only one. Last week, Brother Elric came to the village and asked if anyone had seen unusual lights in the woods. Everyone said no. Everyone lied. Of course there have been lights. Greenish flickers. Flickering lanterns where no paths go. But you don't talk about it. Talking invites attention. And you've got enough problems without catching the devil's eye. See, back in the old days, before the priest built churches on every hilltop, people believed the winter solstice was when the veil between worlds got thin. Too thin. The dead walked. Beasts spoke. Spirits roamed. And the cold? That wasn't just weather. That was something alive. Even now, despite centuries of religion and sermons and scriptural lectures, people still burn herbs around the door, still leave out offerings for the saints. But you notice they don't name the saints, and they don't burn incense the same way they burn juniper and salt. They're hedging their bets. Your aunt, who never speaks about the old ways unless she's been into the mead, once told you that December was when the wild hunt rode. A storm of spirits, dead hunters, animals with burning eyes, all tearing through the sky looking for souls to snatch. If you saw it, you had to throw yourself face down into the snow and not breathe. Not once. You're not sure you believe it. But you've had enough sleepless nights this month to wonder. Even the church leans into it. That's the weird part. You'd think they'd stomp it out, but no. They lean in. More processions, more candles, more special masses for protection. The priest is suddenly obsessed with St. Lucy and St. Nicholas and all the other winter saints who protect against frost, hunger, and, let's be honest, evil. It's a little bit comforting, also deeply unsettling. Last night, a boy down the road woke up screaming, said a man with a goat's head was standing by the hearth, said it smiled at him and then walked through the wall. Everyone said it was a dream. Then his dog died. This morning his father made him chew a piece of charred bread and spit it into the fire while reciting the Lord's Prayer backward. You've never seen the priest move so fast to stop a ritual. Yeah, it's like everyone's dancing on the edge of something they don't want to name. Even your fire doesn't burn the same way. It flickers, hisses, pops at strange intervals. You keep staring into it, seeing faces in the coals. They don't look friendly. Fringe fact for you. In some medieval regions, people fasted even harder in December, not just to honour Advent, but to weaken the body so the soul stays pure during the time of demonic wandering. Makes sense in a twisted way. If you're already half dead, maybe the devils won't bother. Your father doesn't believe in devils, or ghosts, or monsters. He believes in frostbite and hunger and sharp steel. But even he hung iron scissors above the door frame this week, and your mother added a rowan branch just in case. You find yourself jumping at noises. The creak of the roof settling, the wind howling through the chinks in the wall, the low groan of ice forming on the inside of the water bucket. Last night you heard someone whisper your name. You were the only one awake. You told yourself it was nothing, just your mind playing games in the dark, but you still whispered a prayer, just in case. There's a shadow on the hill tonight, just standing there. Could be a tree, could be a man. You don't go out to check. Instead, you pull the blanket over your head and try to sleep. You tell yourself it's just winter, just the dark playing tricks, just the wind. You tell yourself that again and again like a chant. Just the wind, just the wind, just the dash. You wake to silence, not the comforting kind, the kind that makes you sigh and burrow deeper under the covers, but the wrong kind. The kind of silence that presses down on everything, muffling breath, movement, even thought. No birds, no dogs barking, no distant clangs from the blacksmith's forge, just a cold stillness that wraps the village like a shroud. You sit up and rub the frost from your lashes. There's a haze in the air like the world forgot how to move. Your breath puffs in front of you in soft, pale bursts. The fire's long gone out. Again. Then you hear it. A shout. Then two. Then the unmistakable creak of wood bending under stress. You throw on your cloak, tug your boots over half-frozen feet, and run outside. And that's when you see it. The river has frozen, not just iced over at the edges like it did last week. Not thin layers of crystal spiderwebbing out from the rocks. No, this time it's solid, thick, white, dead silent. A flat, glassy spine of ice runs through the valley like a god laid down a mirror and left it there overnight. You stand at the bank watching your breath swirl and vanish as people begin to gather. Nobody says it, but the panic is creeping in already. You can feel it. Because a frozen river isn't just picturesque, it's a problem. It means trade stops, no boats, no ferries, no fishing, no shipments from the town 2 days downstream, no salt, no flour, no barrels of smoked herring or dried cod or wine, or those weird pickled things the monks pretend are good for your soul. You were counting on those. A few brave or reckless kids are already testing the ice. Running out a few feet, sliding, laughing like fools, one of the older villagers yells at them, "You fall through and we're not pulling you out." That's the fear, right? Thin spots, trapped under the surface, drowning with no way up. You've heard the stories, seen it happen once. A boy went out with a hatchet to cut a hole for fishing. The ice cracked. He was gone in seconds. They found him in the spring, half a mile downstream, eyes still open. You stay firmly on land. Someone suggests cutting a channel to break up the ice. Someone else points out that would take days, and probably just refreeze. No one has the energy for that kind of optimism today. Instead, the men haul out axes, chisels, iron rods. Time to make ice holes for fishing. You get assigned to help, naturally. It's not glamorous work. You take turns swinging a blunt blade at a surface that does not care about your feelings. It's like trying to dig through a frozen mountain using sarcasm. Your arms go numb. Your feet are already there. But eventually, the surface cracks. You punch through. Water surges up through the hole like it's gasping for air. You drop in a weighted net, and wait and wait and wait. You catch one fish, small, angry-looking, maybe 3 bites of actual meat on it. You hold it up like a trophy anyway. The other villagers nod. It's not about quantity, it's about proof. Proof the river isn't dead. Yet. Still, the freezing is bad news. Historically, rivers freezing solid during medieval winters were rare, but not impossible. During the Little Ice Age, it happened more than once. There are records of the Thames in London freezing so hard they built markets and held festivals on it. Horse races, puppet shows, bonfires on the ice. It was charming, until the ice gave out, or the fire burned through, and suddenly, poof, one less merchant in the world. You won't be throwing a party on this river, but there's a kind of dark beauty to it. You can see tracks across the surface already. Foxes, maybe a boar, someone's loose goat. For a moment it's tempting to step out and walk across. There's something mythical about it, like crossing into another world, or tempting death to a duel. You stay on shore. Smarter people than you have fallen through with less. You spend the rest of the day pulling slush from the ice hole and tending the fire near the fishing spot. The fish you caught goes into a stew. Everyone gets a bite. The bones are saved to sharpen into needles later. Nothing goes to waste anymore, not even bones. That night your sister asks if the river freezing means the end is coming. You pause. Not the end, but an end. Maybe. Of this season. Of supplies. Of options. Maybe it means the wolves will cross easier, your cousin adds, helpful as ever. Your mother tells him to hush, but she puts an extra log on the fire. You sit in silence, listening to it crackle. The wind outside sounds sharper tonight, like it's dragging claws down the walls. You think about how many things depend on water that moves. Trade, fish, clean dishes, washing clothes, in theory. Even just that sense that life is going somewhere. Now it just sits, frozen, waiting. You dream that night of a world made of ice. Everything solid, still, everyone moving in slow motion, eyes glazed over, skin pale. No sound, just footsteps on frozen snow. When you wake, the fire has gone out again. You strike the flint with stiff fingers and listen for the river, but it's still silent. You're on your knees in the snow, whispering to a chicken skeleton. No, not because you've completely lost your mind, though you're dangerously close. It's because your mother insisted that you help bury St. Gertrude, and in your village this is normal. St. Gertrude wasn't an actual saint. She was your last surviving hen. You lost her last night to the cold, or to something in the cold. You're not sure. Either way, the important thing now is appeasement. You dig a shallow pit behind the barn, bones wrapped in a bit of linen. Your sister sprinkles ash from the hearth into the hole. Your mother murmurs something about protecting the other animals. Then she carves a symbol into the snow with a stick. A loop and a line you've seen on door frames and bread loaves, but never really thought about. Because this is how you survive winter now. Saints, superstitions and snowstorms. In that order. You grew up with stories, not the bedtime kind, the warning kind. If you sweep after dark, you'll invite the devil into your home. If you leave your boots facing west, your soul will wander in your sleep. If you whistle indoors during a snowstorm, something hears it. You never took any of it seriously. Until now. Until the nights got longer than the days and the ice on the window started forming faces. Until people began talking about black spirits at the edge of the woods and seeing their dead uncles in the steam from the soup pot. Until you started believing that maybe, just maybe, the cold has a personality. Not angry exactly, just watchful, patient, like it's waiting for you to make one wrong move. So now you light candles on certain days. Not just any days, feast days. St. Barbara for protection from sudden death. St. Blaise for the throat, because if you cough too hard, your ribs ache for a week. St. Cuthbert, for no good reason except Brother Elric swears he keeps his toes from turning black. You don't argue, you just light the candle. You've got more saints than spoons, and yet for every official holy figure there's a superstition to match. like hanging birch branches above the door to whip away spirits, or baking round loaves to confuse demons because circles don't have corners for evil to hide in. Or the newest one. Don't say the name of someone you miss too loudly, or they might come back. You laugh when you first hear that one, then stop laughing when you hear footsteps outside your window after midnight. No tracks in the morning, no snow disturbed, just the memory of steps. You tell yourself it was a dream, but you don't say any names out loud after that. There's a debate among scholars about how much of this winter folklore was actual belief versus tradition. Some think medieval peasants knew it was mostly symbolic. Others argue that in times of extreme hardship, people really did believe St. Apollonia could cure a toothache by whisper alone. You'd like to think you're smarter than that, and yet tonight you rub garlic on your windowsill, just in case. There's something oddly comforting about it, though. The rituals, the gestures, the doing something, even when there's nothing practical to be done. You can't control the weather, or the hunger, or the wolves, but you can burn a bit of rosemary. You can keep the fire going during the witching hours. You can scatter salt in the corners of the room every Sunday and pretend it matters. Some say it's pagan, some say it's early Christianity, others say it's nonsense, but it's your nonsense, and it gets you through the night. Today, the snow hasn't let up. Visibility is a joke. You can't even see the next hut over. Your cousin went to check the traps and hasn't returned. No one says it, but everyone's worried. Even your uncle, who never admits fear, mutters a prayer into his beer. He names 3 saints, then spits on the floor. That's another thing, spitting is holy now. You sit by the fire with a chunk of cold bread in one hand and your sister's cat curled up in your lap. She's the only one who seems genuinely unbothered by all this. Cats, they say, can see spirits, or are spirits. Depends on the region. Either way, you're not taking any chances. She gets the best spot by the fire. Suddenly your father sits up straight. Time. He reaches for the bell. It's a small, tarnished thing tied with red string. He rings it 3 times. High, clear notes. Everyone in the house pauses. No one explains what it's for, no one needs to. It's just what you do when the snow doesn't stop. You ring the bell to clear the air, to mark the hours, to let something or someone know you're still alive. You hear other bells ringing faintly from nearby homes. 1, 2, 3, then silence. You go to bed early. You keep a bit of iron under your pillow, a sliver of horseshoe from last spring, supposed to keep away nightmares. You've had enough of those lately. The kind where you're outside barefoot and something's following you but you can't look back. You dream of your grandfather. He doesn't speak, just stands in the doorway, watching. When you wake, your cousin is back. Frostbitten fingers, empty hands, traps untouched, but alive. Your mother burns sage and thyme by the door just to be safe. She leaves a bit of bread out on the step, for the dead, or the hungry, or the saints. Depends on who you ask. And somewhere beyond the trees the wind changes, just a little, like it's listening. You drink something that makes your ears buzz and your stomach question every life decision you've made. It was handed to you by old Alice, the village widow with exactly 3 teeth and absolutely 0 fear of death, or flavour. She calls it warming wine, but you're pretty sure there's no wine involved, just boiled herbs, fermented berries, and something that smells like paint thinner. You sip it anyway. It's either this or feeling your blood turn to slush again. Welcome to getting warm the old-fashioned way. Drinking your way through winter with whatever weird liquids survive fermentation. Mead, ale, medicinal teas, mysterious root potions, and things that might technically be poisons, but who's counting? Alice takes a sip from her own mug, smacks her lips, and says, "Makes the demons run." You're not sure if she means inside her or around her, but she seems oddly cheerful considering it's 20 below, and her roof is more patch than structure. You sit beside her, clutching your cup, trying not to breathe through your nose. The drink has an aroma, equal parts yeast, tree bark, and wet socks. But after a few minutes you feel your chest warm, then your cheeks, then your fingertips. It's working, sort of. The medieval alcohol scene isn't glamorous. This isn't frothy tankards and roaring laughter in candle-lit taverns like the songs claim. It's more survival chemistry. Beer is weak, very weak, but safe to drink. Water, always a gamble. Beer, at least the boiling killed the bugs, so even toddlers get a splash of it in their porridge. Some families brew their own from leftover grain mash and what passes for hops, or whatever they can find in the hedgerow. The result is barely alcoholic but keeps you hydrated. And then there's mead, sweet, sticky and rare. Because honey's expensive and bees don't do much in January. When someone breaks out mead in the winter, it's either a feast day or someone's trying to flirt. Speaking of flirting, alcohol is basically the dating app of the Middle Ages. Your cousin Marek once proposed to a girl after 3 cups of beetroot ale and half a boiled onion. She laughed in his face, still married him 6 months later. Then there's the really fun stuff, like herbal liquors made with things you can't pronounce and probably shouldn't ingest. Monkshood, wormwood, celandine. Some of them are medicine, some of them are hallucinations in a bottle. Brother Elric once gave you a sip of something he brewed in secret for joint pain. You spent 2 hours staring at a wall, convinced it was breathing. He swore it was holy inspiration. You swore never again. But winter has a way of making you reconsider. You sit by Aelis's fire, listening to the wind moan through the boards. She hands you a dried mushroom, says, "For clarity." You take it. You chew. It tastes like old paper and swamp. You're instantly deeply concerned. A few minutes later, you're not cold anymore. You're not much of anything. The room goes soft around the edges. The fire flickers in colours it probably shouldn't. Aelis is singing now. Something low and rhythmic. Not words exactly, just sounds. You hum along because your mouth is no longer connected to your brain. You feel your muscles relax for the first time in weeks. The weight of hunger, fear, cold, it doesn't vanish, but it steps back, gives you space to breathe. This is the secret of the season. People don't just survive winter, they blur it. With drink, with ritual, with whatever gets them through the long nights and longer silences. It's not just about numbing pain, it's about pushing back against the void. Because the cold tries to erase you, little by little. First your fingers, then your thoughts, then your voice. If you don't shout or sing or drink or laugh, you disappear. And disappearing is easy this time of year. In fact, some villagers do. You hear about it every year. A man who wandered into the woods with a jug and never came back. A woman who drank too much birch wine and was found face down in the snow, her smile frozen in place. A boy who chased lights across the frozen river and was never seen again. Alcohol is both comfort and danger, warmth and trap. There's a scholarly debate about how widespread alcohol use was among peasants in winter. Some argue that most brews were too weak to do much damage. Others insist heavy winter drinking was common, especially in the northern regions where darkness lasted for months. You don't need a scholar to tell you that the village knows how to drink. They don't toast. They don't sing drinking songs. They just pass the cup, sip in silence, and occasionally mutter things like, "better than freezing." Tonight, though, there's a little laughter. Aelis tells you a story about the time a travelling tinker gave her a bottle of blessing wine that turned out to be goat urine. She didn't speak to a man for 3 years after that. You think she's joking? You hope she's joking. Either way, you laugh. It feels strange, like using a muscle you forgot you had. You head home before the drink wears off completely. The cold hits you harder now, like your body forgot how sharp it could be. You walk carefully, eyes on the ground, breath held like you're sneaking past a sleeping beast. When you reach your door, you knock softly. No reason, just habit. Maybe you're hoping the cold won't hear you. Inside, your family's quiet. Fire low. Blankets pulled tight. You sit down beside your sister and she hands you a warm stone wrapped in cloth. She doesn't ask where you were, but she sniffs the air and then nods. "Smells like Aelis's rat brew," she says. You both laugh. Once, quietly. Then you fall asleep half floating with that strange warmth still buzzing in your bones and for the first time in days, you don't dream of snow. You've had the same conversation 3 times this morning. What are we doing today? Same thing we did yesterday. Which was trying not to eat the dog. It's a joke, mostly, but also, not really, because cabin fever is real. And it's not some quirky phrase a medieval peasant like you tosses around to sound cute. It's a creeping, brain-melting kind of madness that settles in when you've been trapped inside with the same 5 people for what feels like 200 years. It starts with small things, like the way your sister chews bread. Too loud. Too slow. Why does she chew like that? Or the way your father sharpens the same knife every morning, even though no one's used it since the last pig was slaughtered. What does he think he's preparing for? Your cousin, who moved in after his roof caved in during the last storm, keeps humming the same tune, over and over. It's not even a good one. Something about a goat and a spinning wheel. You're considering shoving a boot in his mouth. You love these people, you really do. But if someone doesn't open a window or start saying new words or bathe, someone's going to snap. And spoiler alert, it might be you. You've started pacing, not purposefully, just involuntarily. From the fire to the door to the wall and back again. You caught yourself narrating your movements like a bard describing a battlefield. The young villager approaches the hearth for the 9th time today, fueled by boredom and rage. Your sister didn't even blink, just nodded and offered you half a turnip. That's how far gone you all are. See, no one talks enough about this psychological side of winter in the Middle Ages. The hunger and cold get the headlines. But what about the part where you're crammed in a single-room hut with your entire extended family, a goat, 2 chickens, and a cat who hates everyone? What about the part where you can't go outside without risking frostbite, wolf attacks, or falling into a snowdrift so deep it becomes your grave? What about the part where there's literally nothing new to look at? Ever. You can recite every crack in the wall, every knot in the wood, every shape the frost makes on the window. You start naming them. That one over the fire. Gerald. He looks like a hound howling at the moon. Gerald is your best friend now. You think you heard Gerald whisper to you last night, "This is fine. It's normal." The old folks call it the winter mind. They've seen it happen. They warn against it. Keep your hands busy, your mother says. Keep your mouth shut, your father adds. Both sound like good rules. So you try. You help patch clothes, even though you're terrible with a needle. You stir the soup, even when it doesn't need stirring. You pretend to sweep the floor, even though it's just packed dirt. And you invent games. There's guess the smell. Spoiler, it's usually someone's boots. Who touched my cheese? No one ever owns up. And the classic, if you were a wolf, who would you eat first? Your cousin always votes for himself. He thinks it's noble. It's annoying. Sometimes you fantasize about snow, not because it's beautiful, because if there's enough of it, it might cave in the roof and force you all to evacuate. Even the animals are losing it. The goat has begun eating its own bedding, the cat started hunting imaginary mice, and the chickens have pecked each other bald out of sheer frustration. Fringe fact time. In certain parts of medieval Europe, there were records of people snapping during long winters and committing bizarre crimes. Not for survival, but because they lost it. One man in Bavaria tried to marry his fireplace. A woman in Norway dug a hole under her bed and declared herself queen of the underearth. Both survived the winter. Barely. And yes, sometimes it turns darker. Paranoia. Accusations. You hear whispers about a man 2 villages over who was convinced his brother had been possessed by a snow spirit and locked him in the woodshed for his safety. He wasn't possessed. He was just bad at singing. This is why spring feasts are so wild. Not just because the food's back, but because people need a reason to scream and dance and not murder their relatives. Today, you go outside just to breathe air that doesn't smell like damp wool and silent resentment. You walk in circles around the hut. The snow crunches underfoot like a memory. Your fingers go numb in minutes, but it's worth it. You look at the trees, dead, still, silent. But at least they're not talking back. When you return, the cat is sitting on your blanket like a furry insult. You move her. She bites you. You respect her boundaries and try not to cry. To fight the cabin fever tonight, you all play a storytelling game. Each person adds a sentence to the tale. Your cousin starts, "Once there was a prince who lived in a tree." Your sister adds, "He hated soup." Your father says, "He killed a wolf with a spoon." It devolves from there. By the end, the prince has turned into a goat, married a bear, and declared war on turnips. You laugh so hard you actually snort. Your mother looks scandalized, then laughs too. For one brief moment, the madness turns into joy. Because that's how you survive. You let it all get a little weird. You lean into the strange. You play dumb games and invent imaginary friends and accept that you will probably hate everyone you live with until the thaw. And that's okay. That's winter. You curl up in your blanket, bruised from laughter and goat bites, and whisper goodnight to Gerald, the frost hound on the wall. He doesn't answer tonight, which is somehow comforting. The thaw doesn't arrive like a blessing. It crashes in like a drunken guest, loud, destructive, and far too early. One day the snow is just there, relentless, familiar. Your bitter, white roommate. The next, everything is wet, not melting in the pretty, gentle way that poems talk about, but with a soggy vengeance. You wake up to the sound of dripping, not a trickle, a deluge. You roll over and your bed is damp. You check the thatch overhead and see a leak so direct it may as well have come with a spout. The walls are sweating. The air smells like rot. Welcome to the medieval spring preview, also known as thaw means flood, not relief. Outside, it's chaos. The snow is breaking up like glass, falling away in sudden chunks from roofs, from trees, from the sides of the road. Icicles crash to the ground like spears. The river, which has been silent and frozen for weeks, is now angry. Growling under the ice, snapping branches like toothpicks, dragging hunks of frozen earth into itself. Your cousin swears he saw it pull a cow in. The river always wins, and your nice snow-packed walkways, now they're ankle-deep slop. You step outside and immediately sink into a soup of mud, manure, half-rotted hay, and what you really, really hope is just turnip mush. Every step makes a sound that can only be described as betrayal. The roads disappear. The fields vanish under standing water. Paths flood. The well overflows. Every surface turns hostile. Inside is too wet to sleep. Outside is too wet to live. And then the smells begin. Because the thaw, for all its promise, exposes everything winter buried. Dead animals, spoiled food, chamber pots that couldn't be emptied, moulds in colours that definitely don't exist in nature. You find things you'd forgotten you even owned, now covered in fuzz and quietly decomposing under a broken chair. Your father lifts a board to check the floor and gags. Something died under here. Everyone nods solemnly. No one volunteers to find out what. You're reminded of an old proverb Brother Elric once muttered while drunk. Winter preserves, spring reveals. He was absolutely right. And then, like the universe just wants to kick you while you're down, it starts to rain. Heavy, cold, unrelenting rain. It soaks through the roof, the walls, your boots, your bones. The snow may be gone, but you are wetter and colder than ever. Here's the cruel irony. You start longing for the dry cold. At least back then, things were frozen in place. Predictable. Solid. Now everything's shifting and sliding and oozing. You slip on a puddle in the barn and land face first in something that may or may not have once been oats. You no longer care. The animals are stressed. The goat has developed a cough. The chickens look shell-shocked. The cat refuses to come indoors anymore and now sleeps under the wagon, staring at nothing like she's seen the end of days. And the people? Oh, the people are spiralling. Because the thaw doesn't just mess with the land, it messes with the mind. There's this expectation that things will get better now. That spring will bloom, birds will sing, and food will reappear like magic. But that's not how it works. Thaw's a limbo. Too late for winter plans, too early for planting. Everyone's still half-starved, half-frozen, and now wet. Fires won't stay lit. Dry clothes don't exist. and you haven't had a decent night's sleep in days because everything stinks and something is always dripping. The scholars like to talk about seasonal transition in agrarian societies. There's debate about when medieval peasants started prepping for spring. Some say late February, others not until mid-March. But everyone agrees the thaw was hell and dangerous, because this is when people get sick. The damp opens up lungs like rotten doors. The kids start coughing. The old people stop talking. You wake up one morning and someone's missing from their blanket. It's not dramatic, just quiet, tired, done. No one cries anymore, just nods, wraps the body, places it on high ground until the priest can say the words. And the food? Still a problem. You're out of anything decent. No salt left, no root vegetables, no bread that doesn't require a hammer. The dried beans are full of weevils. You eat them anyway. Protein. You catch your uncle chewing on birch bark. He offers you a piece. You decline. But later, you chew it. There's a term used in old farm records, the starvation gap. It refers to this exact moment, the time between when winter stores run out and spring crops aren't even in the ground yet. It's a real thing, and it kills quietly, slowly, with mildew and wet feet and things you can't see growing in your flour sack. That night the river overflows. You hear it before you see it. A rumble like a monster snoring. Then the crashing. You grab what you can and run outside in time to see the bank collapse. The footbridge you helped repair in autumn, gone. The fields behind the mill, underwater. The mill itself is just tilting, confused, like it's trying to remember how gravity works. No one screams, just more of that stunned silence. It's the kind of loss you can't react to, because there's too much to lose and reacting is exhausting. You help stack sandbags made from old tunics. It's not enough. Nothing is. Water always wins. When you finally stagger back home, soaked, your sister hands you a cup of broth that tastes like regret and parsley. You drink it in silence. The rain hasn't stopped. You lie down that night not in a bed, but in a damp compromise between floor and straw. Everything smells like wet dog and grief. But you're still here. Somehow. You whisper to the ceiling, tomorrow. Tomorrow has to be better. And then a drop of water hits you square between the eyes. You wake to birdsong. It doesn't register at first. You blink at the ceiling, heart pounding because something is wrong. There's a noise outside that doesn't sound like wind or coughing or collapsing roofs or wolves. It's chirping, high, bright, unbelievably annoying, and weirdly beautiful. You sit up slowly. The fire's gone out, again, but the air doesn't cut like it used to. It's still cold, sure, but not that biting, murderous kind of cold. It's just chilly, manageable, almost gentle. You stumble to the door and push it open. The world has changed. It's not dramatic. There's no beam of sunlight breaking through clouds, no sudden transformation. But the snow is patchy now. The mud still sucks at your boots, but there are blades of grass poking through. The trees are bare, yes, but they don't feel dead anymore, just quiet. Waiting. You hear dripping, the kind that means something good this time. You take a deep breath, and your lungs don't ache. Your sister comes up beside you, rubbing her arms. Still ugly, she says. You nod. But it's trying. And it is. The world is trying to live again. The thaw isn't over, but it's slowing. The river has stopped foaming at the mouth. The sky has cracked open just enough to hint at blue. Not bright blue. Not yet. Just possibility. You hear someone shout down the road. A birth. Not a death. A birth. It's the neighbour's cow. She's been waddling around for a week looking ready to explode, and this morning she finally did. You and your sister run to help, laughing for the first time in what feels like forever. The calf is slippery, confused, and beautiful in that weird, lumpy way baby animals are. You watch it struggle to its feet, legs wobbling like half-melted candles. When it stands, finally, miraculously, you all cheer like you've just won a war. Because you have. This is what survival looks like, and it's not clean, it's not glorious. It's muddy and sore and full of blisters, but it's real. and you made it. Somehow. That afternoon, you help clear the footpath to the fields. The ground underneath is soft and black, planting soil. Not quite ready, but close. A few weeks, maybe. You spot the first stubborn green bud on a thorn bush and nearly cry. Your cousin jokes that it's edible. You pretend to punch him. Everyone's giddy, exhausted, wired, like soldiers coming off a battlefield. Because that's what winter was, a siege, and the frost is retreating. Even the sky looks different. It's not warm, not yet, but it's lighter. The kind of light that makes you believe spring is real. That you won't always be wearing 3 layers and boiling your socks. And with that light comes something else you didn't expect. Hope. You remember the monastery boys and their frozen ink. The monks who wrote prayers with frostbitten fingers. You wonder if they're smiling now, finally copying psalms without their noses turning blue. You remember old Alice and her terrifying root lickers. You hope she's still sipping them, yelling at ghosts and chasing away demons with garlic. You remember St. Gertrude, the chicken you buried. You almost feel like she's watching. You even remember Gerald, the frost hound face on your wall. You check to see if he's melted. He has. You're not sure how to feel about that. And now, you begin to prepare. Because the brutal reality is this. You'll have to do it all again next year, and the one after that. If you're lucky, if you live. So you start rebuilding. You patch the thatch. You clean the tools. You dig up anything that didn't rot in the frost. You whisper promises to the soil. You count what little seed you have left. And you plan. You plan harder than you've ever planned. Because surviving wasn't just luck, it was persistence, tricks, hacks, faith, desperation, humour, rage, all of it. You want to make it easier next time. You want fewer lost fingers, fewer buried chickens, fewer frozen toes, and fewer dreams that end with your own breath fogging in the void. So you collect what worked. The moss that helped blisters, the trick with the heated stones, the special spot near the hearth where the drafts don't reach, the saint you actually like. You're keeping St. Cuthbert. He's weird, but he showed up. You remember the good moments, the laughter, the soup that didn't make you gag, the goat who warmed your feet without biting you, and you carry it forward, because winter will come again. You know this, but now you also know how to endure it, and not just survive, but live, even if it means whispering to frost hounds, even if it means burying chickens like saints, even if it means drinking mushroom wine with a woman who may be immortal. You'll do it. Because you've seen what waits on the other side of the ice. The thaw isn't perfect, but it's a beginning, and you're here for it. So, you made it. Through the darkness, through the cold, through the snow that crept under your door, the hunger that curled in your belly, the coughs that didn't go away, the firewood that never lasted, and the long, heavy nights that stretched out like a second lifetime. You pushed through every frozen footstep, every sour bowl of broth, every whispered superstition and candlelit prayer. You faced it all with cracked hands and chapped lips, and somehow you're still here. That deserves something, like a breath, a moment. You don't get medals for surviving winter in the Middle Ages, just blisters. And maybe a single good apple you buried in the cellar behind the pickled onions and forgot about until now. But that's okay, because what you get instead is this. The first day, you don't shiver. The first time your boots sink into mud instead of snow. The first green bud on a bare branch. The first laugh that doesn't sound forced. You learn to notice these things, to hold on to them, because you've earned that quiet joy. And yes, winter will come again. It always does. But next time, you'll be ready. With better tricks, stronger boots, a sharper eye for frostbite and ghost stories, and maybe, just maybe, a few more people by your side to face the next long night together. But for now, sleep. Let the frost melt from your thoughts. Let the wind grow softer in your ears. Let the fire in your imagination flicker low and slow until it's just embers, just warmth, just enough. Because the brutal part is over, and spring, messy, muddy, miraculous spring is coming, You've survived. Good night, traveller.